14 years ago, for some godforsaken reason, this young guy was suddenly tossed into a place called the Hero's Murim. He woke up in the middle of nowhere, a barren wasteland where even the birds don't dare to land. A few years passed, and all this guy, Shin Hyun, was given in that hellhole of a cave was a manual called The Heavenly Martial Arts Origin and those bright yellow notification messages. I thought that finishing all these tasks would finally let him go back home. But nope, nothing but a screen saying, "Congratulations on completing the tutorial." Shin Hyun just stood there, crying without a sound. Looking at the cave door slowly opening, he thought, "I did it. It's finally over. Mom, Dad, I'm coming home." But then, screw this. He collapsed to his knees, sobbing and screaming in pure agony. What kind of twisted place is this? Why are you doing this to me? Isn't what I've been through enough? Why, I spent 15 years seeing the scene beyond that black veil. Shin Hyun finally realized that where he arrived wasn't the end of the world. It was just the beginning. While he was drowning in gloom and couldn't even vent his rage, someone had to go and bother him. Some weakling came out of nowhere, trembling while holding his sword just to ask for some meat. How absurd. Why the hell would he help that guy? He should have just killed him and saved the trouble. Shin Hyun backed away, muttering, "It's not my fault, it's not my fault. He attacked me first, I had no choice." He was so scared he was about to lose it, when suddenly, that yellow text appeared again. "Your external martial arts have leveled up." Shin Hyun's face softened, and he broke into a sinister grin. "A dead man, and I get a level up? Ha 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 ha!" At that moment, he realized what he had to do. To return to the world he belonged to, he needed to reach the pinnacle. After hundreds of long, agonizing years, the title of the Supreme Sword Emperor, Cha Shin Hyun, was finally his. The only joy Shin Hyun could find was in ruthless slaughter. Every few years, he would wipe out a demonic sect, leaving only one survivor and forcing him to become the new leader. Just to have some fun a few years later, he'd wipe out the whole sect again, then point his sword at the new leader's throat and ask, "Which generation of the demonic sect are you leading?" When the guy stayed silent, Shin Hyun counted on his fingers with a wicked grin. "The 8th, right? Because the ones who died at my hands were the 6th and 7th. You guys make me proud. You always come back to find me every 20 years. After mocking him, he sliced the guy's head off in one clean stroke. Shin Hyun sat sadly against a tree, wondering what he should do to entertain himself next. Should he start another demonic sect with some top-tier martial artists? It was getting so boring. 140 years had passed, and he had forgotten everything while trying to find a way out, watching the world cycle through its end. By now, he couldn't even remember his family's faces. Shin Hyun felt trapped in a living hell, with thoughts of giving up crossing his mind every day. Enough is enough. Time to end it all. That was all he could think about. But, ironically, right at that moment, the status bar appeared. External art, level 50, max. Internal art, level 50, max. Congratulations, you have reached the maximum level. Ascension limit has been removed. You are returning to Earth. Seeing those lines, Shin Hyun could only hold his head and let out a hollow laugh. After all these years, did they pity him for giving up? Or were they looking down on him? The fury and resentment within him exploded. All that remained in him was a heart filled with hatred. Shin Hyun swore to find whoever turned him into this, and skewer every last one of them, no matter who they were or where they were hiding. South Korea, 2011. After Shin Hyun's accident, dungeons suddenly appeared and monsters poured out. Humanity suffered a terrible tragedy. A goddess appeared and granted mankind blessings to fight those nightmares. 2025. At the Red Wolf Dungeon in Korea, a hunter team was clearing it out, but unfortunately, members were dropping like flies. The low-level soldiers were becoming a delicious meal for the monsters. Team leader Cha Eun-seol was struggling to save them, but it didn't look good. Her energy was running dry. She was almost ready to pay a visit to the Grim Reaper. Even though she was exhausted, seeing someone she hated made her jump right back into combat. Cha Eun-seol, with a temper as hot as fire, was already furious when she ran into that jerk Seo Ju-han. The source of this whole mess was trying to sneak off alone, ignoring the monsters. Cha Eun-seol fired a shot at him as a warning, then approached to teach him a lesson. She grabbed him by the collar and roared, "You damn idiot, where do you think you're going? I told you already. The battlefield is incredibly dangerous. It's all because of you, you incompetent coward. Do you want us all to die? Johan didn't take it lying down. He yanked his arm back and barked back, "Shut it, you bitch!" So what if they all die? At least I need to make it out of here alive. The more he talked, the more Cha Eun-seol despised him. She turned away and threw a final challenge at him. I must be crazy to even talk to a piece of trash like you. Just wait. Even if your old man covers for you, let's see if he can turn a blind eye this time after we get back. Enraged, the jerk actually struck their own team leader, sending her flying. He aggressively marched toward her, grabbed her hair, and began to threaten her. Who do you think you're messing with, you pathetic loser? You can't even handle the basics. Have you been listening to their sycophantic flattery for so long that you actually think you're good? If you want to be famous so badly, how about I give you a helping hand? Hi means he's going to fake the whole team's death, pinning the failed dungeon raid and their demise on Cha Eun-seol's incompetence as team leader. Is that how it's all going to play out? Johan raises his hand, his eyes filled with murderous intent, whispering a final goodbye. You've worked hard, Captain Cha. But before he can strike, a flash of light zips past him, making him freeze. He turns to see a scruffy guy with long hair grinning like a total lunatic, spewing nonsense nobody can understand. Turns out the reward for reaching the peak is getting sent back to Earth. What kind of weird hobby is this? I'm going to kill you. Your mouth really doesn't know when to quit, does it? Every time Seo Johan opens his mouth, he's just begging for a beating. He stares at the guy in front of him, his rage boiling over. He points a finger, demanding to know where this random freak crawled out from. I keeps rambling on about killing people and teleporting. What is he, some kind of wizard? Just tell me who you're connected to. Ignoring his non-stop chatter, Shin Hyun walks straight past him toward the girl lying crumpled on the ground. Being treated like air makes Seo Johan's teeth grind in fury. He decides to kill him to keep his mouth shut. He doesn't even ask questions, he just lunges, trying to fight dirty. But hey, even fighting fair wouldn't save him. And fighting dirty? That's just a one-way ticket to getting crushed. Shin Hyun wanted to return quietly, but looking at the situation, that's clearly not an option. Glancing at the necklace around the girl's neck, he instantly hits his limit. Shin Hyun stomps the ground, causing the earth to crack as a massive wave of energy surges out. It engulfs the whole area. Shin Hyun is truly furious now. He looks into Seo Johan's blank, confused eyes and replies, I didn't notice before, but you asked for my name, didn't you? I am the Supreme Sword Emperor, Cha Shin Hyun, but even if I told you that, it wouldn't mean a thing. That's right. I'm Shin Hyun, Cha Eun-seol's older brother. As soon as the words left his lips, that scumbag took a lethal blow and was sent straight back to his ancestors. That very night, Cha Eun-seol wakes up from a nightmare about that accident years ago. She still carries the crushing guilt, believing that her stubborn whining about wanting to go to the amusement park was the reason her parents died and her brother went missing. She gasps, her eyes flying open in shock. Who are you? Was the first thing she managed to whisper when she saw the stranger in front of her. Shin Hyun hurriedly takes her hands, filled with warmth, and gently explains, You've grown up so much. I can't carry you on my back anymore, not because you're heavy, but because you're all grown up now. Cha Eun-seol clutches the necklace with the family photo her brother had given her. She thinks she's dreaming, but when she finally comes to her senses, she realizes it's real. Cha Eun-seol breaks into loud, uncontrollable sobs. She hugs him and starts scolding him. You jerk, where have you been? But even with the emotional reunion, she still has a mission to attend to. She immediately shoves her brother aside to ask about the whereabouts of that scumbag. Seo Johan. After seeing his corpse lying discarded over there, Cha Eun-seol can't help but be startled, hurriedly grabbing her brother's hand. You killed him, didn't you? We have to run! Right now! Shin Hyun doesn't get why, but he follows along to keep her happy. Returning to the house they once lived in, he looks around every corner. He remarks that it looks just like the old days. Cha Eun-seol doesn't have time for that. She's terrified, thinking they're about to be in huge trouble. Chairman Seo Kangjin will surely be here soon. Seo Kangjin is the chairman of the Dawn Guild and Seo Johan's father. He used to be a member of a notoriously brutal, ruthless gang and is one of the 11 highest-ranked hunters in South Korea. Looking at the clock, it's past 9. It's been way too long since the status report was due. Cha Eun-seol's heart is burning with anxiety. She wonders if Seo Kangjin already knows his son is dead, and since she's the only survivor, she's obviously his next target. Seeing his little sister worrying about nonsense, Shin Hyun opens his mouth to comfort her. He smooths back his hair, trying to look cool and collected. Is that all you're worried about? Isn't it too simple? I can just kill Seo Kangjin. I'm the Supreme Sword Emperor, Cha Shin-hyun. Seriously, the sibling bond is giving her a massive headache. Listening to her brother, she feels her blood pressure rising. Cha Eun-seol holds her head in distress, both angry and frustrated. Supreme Sword Emperor? Who actually uses a title like that? And what's up with the way you talk? You've been gone for 14 years and this is how you come back? Do you have some kind of mental illness? You have no idea. Mom and Dad passed away, you disappeared. Do you know how miserable my life has been until now? Where on earth have you been to only return now? Shin-hyun knows the answer. He looks at the family photo of the four of them, unable to express his sorrow because the last 14 years have worn him down so much. Shin-hyun only gives a brief explanation about being in the martial arts world all that time. The important thing now is that he needs to get up to speed. He leans into his sister's face, asking rapid-fire questions. What is a hunter? What is a guild? Does this world have a level system too? Cha Eun-seol feels her head throbbing. She doesn't have time to explain everything right now. Leaving her clueless brother behind, she rushes out of the house. She needs to get to the Dawn Guild to handle some urgent matters. Before she leaves, she makes sure to tell Shin-hyun to stay put and warns him not to wander off, promising she'll be right back. Well, since it's been so long, he figures he might as well listen to her. That was a few seconds ago, but now he strokes his chin, lost in thought. First things first. This Seo Kangjin guy, right? I should probably go find him. Actually, no need to waste my energy. Why bother looking for them when they're not even worth the effort? And just like that, they show up right on cue. Crash! The main door is blown to bits, and three massive thugs storm in. They're bursting with arrogance, skipping the pleasantries and cutting straight to the point. Where's Cha Eun-seol? Suddenly, the peaceful house is a wreck. Shin-hyun, naturally, is starting to boil over. He points at them, ready to give these guys a lecture. So you're Kangjin, huh? Did your parents teach you to smash through doors when visiting someone's home? You're supposed to knock, you know. Taken aback by the sudden scolding, the chairman of Dawn still manages to keep his cool and drops the ultimatum again. Where is Cha Eun-seol? Shin-hyun doesn't give a damn, answering with open contempt. So that's why you're looking for Cha Eun-seol. If you're looking for the person who killed your son, well, you're looking at him. This was exactly what Seo Kangjin was waiting for. The guy completely loses it. The sword in his hand begins to glow with a menacing red aura, and he charges forward at light speed. You're saying the brother who returned from the martial realm is you, Shin-hyun? Is that right? Fine then. Let's see just how strong you really are. Shin-hyun's mouth begins to water. He's actually salivating. Yes, this is the moment I've been waiting for. That wicked smile stretches across his face again. He parries with his bare hands, his body moving with impossible agility, dodging blow after blow. Standing tall, he looks down at the blade surging with mysterious energy and starts sizing up the situation. Come to think of it, that Seo Jong-han guy was using some strange power too. Shin-hyun exclaims in excitement, "This guy? He's worth looking into!" With his sequential slash technique, Seo Kangjin unleashes a barrage of strikes, finishing with a direct hit aimed straight at his head. Shin-hyun effortlessly spins, dodging everything, barehanded. He's genuinely thrilled, watching the guy with curious eyes. With a level like this, he's on par with a supreme mage, not bad at all, I'm impressed. Shin-hyun eagerly grabs the sword and snap. He just breaks it in half. So basically, there are about 10,000 people like you in South Korea, right? Things are starting to turn out even better than I expected. He glances over at the minions standing outside who keep chanting chairman over and over. He waves a hand at them, "Don't bother me," and throws in a little scare tactic for good measure. But are they scared? Not a chance. They combine their efforts to launch a fireball spell, laughing gleefully, thinking they've finally finished him off. Little do they know that was barely enough to tickle Shin-hyun. Just like that, Shin-hyun shows them what real martial arts looks like. Even though all three are top-tier martial masters, they're still not in the same league as the top 10. So, game over. Just then, Shin-hyun's sister happens to arrive at the gates of Dawn. She's tough-talking, but honestly, she's pretty nervous. What if she gets caught the second she steps foot into headquarters? She'd have no idea who to turn to for help. While she's panicking and trying to figure out a plan, she coincidentally runs into Lee Ji-hee, the Vice Guild Master of Dawn, who is casually sipping coffee. She's known as one of the 4 strongest hunters in Korea. She has a reputation for being upright and honest, but she's also a total wild card. Cha Eun-seol is pretty hesitant. Should she really trust her? Still, it's her only option right now. So, she has to swallow her pride and make the first move. Cha Eun-seol vaguely explains the situation to Lee Ji-hee, blah blah this and that. She expects to get slapped in handcuffs, but the twist is, the woman suddenly wants to meet Shin Hyun. She even promises to cover up the mess Cha Eun-seol caused with that Seo Jong-han guy. It's an offer too good to refuse. As much as she loves her brother, Cha Eun-seol has to sell him out to buy herself some peace. Back to Shin Hyun, he's absolutely buzzing after blocking Seo Jong-han's attack with his bare hands. He looks at the guy and demands, "You possess a power that I've never seen or heard of in the martial realm. That strange energy, use it again." The minions who weren't supposed to approach keep rushing in, only for him to beat them senseless. They scream in terror, begging for mercy, running in circles, but there's no way out. Because Shin Hyun has already cast an invisible barrier to protect the house from the tremors. Seo Jong-han, lugging around a massive blade, winces and wonders to himself, "What kind of monster am I dealing with?" He clenches his fists, his energy surging with terrifying intensity as he launches an attack at this weird, insane guy. "I'm not going down alone!" Shin Hyun stands his ground, not the slightest bit afraid. Honestly, he feels more pity than anger for the guy now. Who's the real monster here? It's pretty obvious. Seo Jong-han slashes one way, Shin Hyun gently dodges the other. I can't even land a finger on his opponent. Seo Jong-han loses it completely, his judgment clouded, panicking like a total amateur. Shin Hyun, however, shows him a bit of respect. He picks up the guy's broken sword, gives a wicked little smile, and slash! An incredibly sharp strike. Jong-han only has time to let out a gasp before he hits the floor, lifeless. Shin Hyun turns back and drops one final line to see him off. Consider it an honor. That was a strike from the Supreme Sword Emperor himself. Having dealt with those pests, even the Sword Emperor has to tidy up the place. If his sister comes home and sees a mess, he's gonna get an earful. And speaking of the devil, she's already here. Cha Eun-seo was already looming at the doorway, grumbling about why the door was wide open. But get this, sis. Here's the part that'll blow your mind. She was hit with a sight more miserable than she could have imagined. Shin Hyun was casually wringing out a cleaning rag, replying calmly, "I didn't have time to stop them. No need to be surprised, it's just a housewarming party." A party? That sounded absurd, but in reality, it was a crime scene. Cha Eun-seo couldn't accept it and yelled in frustration, ignoring the guests. "Why is there blood everywhere at a housewarming party? Are you planning to keep causing trouble now that you're back?" Shin Hyun pretended to ignore her, trying to change the subject. "Your expressions are quite something. If you went to the Murim world, you'd probably be the strongest." The banter between these two siblings was intense. Neither would back down, at least, not until they noticed the stranger. They finally stopped and got down to business, entertaining their guest. The moment Shin Hyun saw Lee Ji-hye, he felt something strange. Her internal energy was resonating with his heavenly martial arts technique, and on top of that, she was even using telepathy. Shin Hyun froze for a few seconds. But then, he started to grasp the situation after she asked, "Do you think you're the only one who has been there?" It had been a week since Shin Hyun returned. Everything was fairly quiet. The black-clad men had cleaned up the corpses, and Seo Kang-jin had been falsely declared retired. Lee Ji-hye had kept her promise. Since she was the only survivor and held responsibility for wiping out the Red Wolf Guild, the Hunter Association kept a close eye on Cha Eun-seo for the long term, and today, she had called Shin Hyun out to discuss business. Holding a cup of tea, Lee Ji-hye sipped it while reminiscing. "I see you're familiar with Yongsan tea. I used to stop by Hunan to enjoy this kind of tea." Back in the Murim world, she had been very blunt, going straight to the point. According to Lee Ji-hye, there were 3 confirmed people who had returned from the Murim realm. Her, him, and the leader of the Unhwan Guild, Park Tae-hun. The Unhwan and Aurora guilds had directly challenged the power of the Korean Hunter Association in the past. After comparing stories, things became clearer. Back in 2011, he had woken up in a mysterious cave and found the scroll for the heavenly martial arts technique. And after leaving this cave, he discovered he was in a place called the Murim world. This was exactly what all 3 had experienced. Lee Ji-hye believed the world being turned upside down, and them being sent to the Murim world were definitely connected, though she didn't know if it was the duty or the scheme of some big shots. 14 years ago, after the dungeon goddess's apocalypse, monsters and hunters appeared, along with a system of classes and skills that was no different from an RPG. Brushing aside the past, Shin-hyun asked her how they managed to return to Earth. She looked surprised, but replied coolly, "We returned here after dying. Aren't you the same as us?" Hearing that, Shin-hyun immediately crushed the teacup in his hand. A truly interesting feeling. So, watching the end of the world was that terrifying, huh? He realized there would be a reward for reaching the maximum hunter level, and that was the answer to his question, provided the goddess didn't want to lose face. Shin-hyun got what he wanted and asked Lee Ji-hye directly why she had approached him. She, of course, didn't bother hiding it. Being honest from the start was probably better. Basically, because the Aurora Guild and the Unhwan Guild were clashing fiercely, she didn't know what the consequences would be. And since Shin-hyun had sent Seo Kang-jin to the afterlife and defeated the core force of the Aurora Guild, he had to take responsibility for that. "Please join the Aurora Guild, Cha Shin-hyun. I promise to make you an executive. Wealth and fame will be yours." That was what Lee Ji-hye offered. The deal was decent. Shin-hyun thought in silence. Because it involved his sister's status, it would be very difficult to refuse such an offer. But screw that. His answer was, "I have to refuse. I prefer working alone." And he turned to her, flashing a supremely confident smile regarding their martial arts levels. "Being weaker won't solve the problem, don't you think so?" Suddenly looked down upon, Lee Ji-hye wasn't about to take it lying down. Let's see who's really the weaker one. So, in the middle of a calm conversation, they decided to have a sparring match to settle the score. As expected of a Murim expert, she was ready to fight right after Shin-hyun's firm statement, "If you spend 300 years there, anyone would be weaker than me." Lee Ji-hye was itching for a fight. She unleashed an incredibly powerful magical field that enveloped the entire space. Shin-hyun's senses were being neutralized, and everything around him went pitch black. A 50-meter radius of effect. Scanning the area, he began to assess the situation. Creating a technique on this scale, with just physics, would take a lot of effort and time. Lee Ji-hye explained so her opponent wouldn't be caught off guard. "This is my unique skill. From the outside, it looks like we've suddenly vanished. In the Murim world, my nickname was the Bloody Plum Blossom. I have never failed an assassination." Lee Ji-hye held a dagger in her hand, her killing intent flooding the area. She stepped forward excitedly. "Escaping this place is simple. Either defeat me or die right here." The moment she finished speaking, she appeared right in front of him. In a few short seconds, her blade was at Shin-hyun's throat. "I don't care if it's plum blossoms, peach blossoms, red or not. Shin-hyun could handle it all." He tilted his head back, dodging all of her attacks with his bare hands. For Lee Ji-hye's earth-shattering kick, he crouched down to keep his balance. Then, judging with his naked eye, she had a dagger in each hand, one held in reverse. The technique was strange. Even the Black King, the top assassin of the Murim world, Lee Ji-hye, was quite surprised. She couldn't believe he could see through all of that just with his eyes. Shin-hyun continued, trying to shake her mental state. "I once fought someone who used that. But since I was inexperienced back then, I accidentally killed him in a flash." A short but punchy remark. Dealing with women, you have to treat them delicately, but he wasn't pulling any punches. He handled her as gently as holding a flower, so he gave her a handicap. If she could defeat him using one of 3 specific stances, he would agree to join the Dawn Guild. For the first stance, Shin-hyun dodged with masterful ease. For the second, he slipped away without losing a single hair. Lee Ji-hye went all out, using every ounce of her strength. Before unleashing her final move, she threw out a challenge. "If I manage to kill you, will I become the strongest in the martial arts world?" That was truly a statement that left the opponent speechless. Shin-hyun was struck dumb. His silence spoke volumes. She summoned blades from the earth, using them to manifest flows of mana. Like the tails of a fox, she launched them all at Shin-hyun, but he just stood his ground. With a sword of intent he created, he shattered all of her preceding attacks. A massive boulder blocked Lee Ji-hye's vision, preparing to come crashing down on her. Lee Ji-hye couldn't move, as if she were being held in place by something. Just as she was about to be crushed by the rock, Shin-hyun appeared out of nowhere and smashed it to pieces with a single punch. He turned to her and asked, "That's the third one. It's over. Do you want to continue?" At this point, continuing would just mean getting served a beating. Lee Ji-hae wasn't stupid. She stood frozen like a statue and stammered, "No, I lost." Clutching her injured arm, Lee Ji-hae promised she wouldn't challenge him to another fight. In return, he had to tell her what he had done. In that split second, she felt like she was fighting an entity she could never hope to resist. Finding the fight quite exhilarating, Shin Hyun agreed to her terms. The Dawn Guild would provide items and information, and he would use his power to support them. Shin Hyun raised a finger, stating his requirement. "I will act as an outsider. Not linked to the Dawn Guild. Consider it an alliance." They had been beaten so badly. If she didn't agree, she had no choice. Lee Ji-hae pretended to think it over, then finally nodded in agreement. She still tried to haggle, making him promise not to cooperate with the Thousand-Year Guild, no matter what happened. Shin Hyun didn't seem interested, but strangely enough, he pledged it on his honor as the Supreme Sword Emperor. That was the kicker. All terms of cooperation were practically settled. With nothing left to worry about, after being served a beating for a meal, he returned. Seeing the state of the Vice Guild leader, the driver couldn't help but ask anxiously, "Are you okay?" Lee Ji-hae just gave a dismissive laugh and praised Shin Hyun's talent. "As expected, he's truly extraordinary. My stamina is drained and I'm out of mana. Even though he never once attacked me, I don't even know what he did to block my blade." Shin Hyun had just stepped into the house. His younger sister rushed out and hugged him, letting out a string of reproaches. Shin Hyun, confused, patted her head and asked casually, "Yoon Seol, why are you acting like this? Are you trying to get rid of me?" Yoon Seol was fuming and told him to shut his mouth. "From now on, don't go anywhere. Just stay home and hover around like a pet fish." Shin Hyun understood. His sister was afraid he would disappear again, which was why she said that. So, he flashed a corporate smile and muttered some nonsense. "I'm thinking about becoming a hunter, Yoon Seol." She couldn't even force a frown. She couldn't even crack a smile. Her face looked completely pained. She retorted, dumbfounded, "Are you trying to get yourself killed?" After a brief explanation, Shin Hyun pulled out the monocore he got from Lee Ji-hae. She had said that if he had this, "You can possess a hunter's status window." Ignoring his sister, Shin Hyun immediately absorbed it. Whoa, it actually vanished. It was really happening. There was no turning back now. Yoon Seol told him to try summoning the status window. Shin Hyun opened it right away. On the left was the martial arts status window that only he could see, and on the right was the hunter status window. Yoon Seol suddenly told him to check his class. As soon as she saw the notification, she grinned like a spring flower. "Just as I thought, you're not the type to have a class. If that's the case, just give up, brother." Shin Hyun had no idea what she was talking about and asked, "Why, what is it?" Yoon Seol was in a good mood, so she was ready to explain. Hunters are divided into 6 classes: warrior, guardian, mage, cleric, archer, and assassin. If you're in a high-ranking class, of course, there are more, but basically there are 6 hunter classes. Yoon Seol is an example. My class is archer, but my advanced class is sniper. But you started with a basic class, so you can't refuse or change it. Yoon Seol emphasized, with a look of pure glee, "But you have no class." This meant that Shin Hyun hadn't received any class at all. You're just a normal human. There are a few exceptions. People without classes can become hunters. But the problem is the skills. Yoon Seol started twisting the story in a negative direction, aiming to take advantage of this, to make her brother abandon his plan. She put on a menacing look and explained further. Hunters need experience points to level up, and you can only fight monsters. By using skills you get from experience points. Unlike the 6 hunter classes, someone with no class has to buy skills from a skill block. The cheapest skill, a hand-to-hand skill, costs 20 million won. A swordsmanship skill costs 25 million won. Hunters with a class automatically get skills by leveling up, but a hunter with no class has to constantly pour money into it. "But brother, do you have any money?" At the mention of money, Shin Hyun's face twitched. He stayed silent for a few seconds, then suddenly shouted, "Lee Ji-hae! I've got a sugar mommy backing me!" Lee Ji-hae, she knew her plans, had gone down the drain. Yoon Seol had to sulk and grumble, reluctantly accepting it. She led her brother to the evil training ground of the Dawn Guild to help him broaden his horizons, hoping he would see the difficulty and quit. Yoon Seol drew her bow, aimed straight at a rabbit in front of her, and fired. A small explosion occurred, and the rabbit was eliminated, turning into loot, a moonstone. Shin Hyun held the stone in his hand, gazing at it for a while and asked curiously, "A moonstone? You said this helps me earn money?" Yunsul excitedly said that it was natural spiritual energy containing an incredible amount of power. That's why natural vegetation is gradually disappearing, due to the appearance of monsters. She was still explaining, just getting to the part about warning him that anything could happen when he already raised his hand like a gun, pointing it. While the little girl was still explaining about the monster's appearance and warning him to be careful because anything could happen, he had already raised his hand, pointing his fingers like a handgun. He wiped out several monsters with just a few flicks of his fingers, but the only catch was that using martial arts energy didn't grant him any experience points. He scanned his status window, lost in thought. Shin Hyun wondered if he should ask Lee Ji-hye for a different skill. What kind of skill is that common, where anyone can just pick it up? At this rate, he wouldn't get anything done. But let's put that aside for now. Spotting an interesting spot, Shin Hyun pulled his sister along. Yoon-seol couldn't help but be shocked by the horde of rabbit monsters in front of them, stammering to ask why there were so many. Turns out, Shin Hyun had already scouted them out using his long-range senses before they even arrived. He had accurately counted 337 of them. Before Yoon-seol could even draw her sword, he had already picked off a few hundred of them, claiming moonstones. The system kept bombarding him with tutorials on how to fight. It was getting on Shin Hyun's nerves. Who did it think it was trying to lecture him? He grumbled that it would still be annoying even 100 years from now. With the system windows popping up non-stop and blocking his view, he furiously tapped away, trying to find the settings to shrink them. Yoon-seol stood to the side, pale and cold-sweating. She couldn't believe her brother had reached A+ proficiency just like that. Suddenly, it was as if Shin Hyun had a breakthrough. Without turning back, he asked his sister, "You still get experience points for killing monsters with indirect skills that don't consume mana, right?" Though it sounded like a bit of a stretch, Yoon-seol nodded anyway. Shin Hyun suddenly let out a crazed laugh and cracked his knuckles, excitedly saying he wanted to make everything easier from now on. No sooner had he finished speaking than he unleashed a strike that obliterated half a hill, declaring that from now on, he'd use martial arts energy to gain hunter experience points. After saying that, he even acted all apologetic to the other hunters. Both the legendary hunter and his sister standing nearby were stunned that she hadn't received an origin skill like he had. Yoon-seol suddenly froze for a few seconds, stammering as she finally got her thoughts out. "Teach me martial arts energy!" So she had realized the true power of her older brother and was now begging him. As a team leader, she didn't want to lose any more teammates. She didn't want to live with regret forever. Seeing his little sister so stubborn and in tears, Shin Hyun reached out, gripped her shoulders firmly and said, "I'll teach you. But calm down first. I've never taken on a student before and I'm going to be very strict." In any case, even if she hadn't asked, he had intended to teach her because he couldn't stay by Yoon-seol's side forever. Who knew what the future would bring? With that, Shin Hyun gave a smug grin and beckoned her to follow. With that in mind, let's head to the next spot. How was acting like this was just a casual round of golf, just up and leaving whenever he felt like it. Yoon-seol curiously asked her brother what his next plan was now that he had mastered sword techniques. Was he going to keep using warrior-related skills forever? Shin Hyun tossed a few hits at some rabbits while vaguely replying that he wanted to excel in special class skills. With his sharp intuition, he had already realized something about Lee Ji-hye. Someone who specialized in using her fists was able to level up higher by linking martial arts energy with assassination techniques. Therefore, he also needed to find a skill that could link with his martial arts energy. Just then, as he lunged into the sea of monsters, he hit upon a new idea, a whole new realm of skills. What if I can't link it with martial arts, was what he thought. Shin Hyun wiped out thousands of rabbits in a single move, sat down with a thud, and loudly declared, "I'm going to become a mage!" Yoon-seol was left completely stunned, rendered speechless and unable to say another word. No matter how much she tried to talk sense into him, her brother was clearly beyond reasoning. Dejected, Yoon-seol busied herself picking up the loot that had dropped. Looking at the haul, she exclaimed, "I don't need to worry about our living expenses anymore." Ignoring his sister, Shin Hyun was still lost in his own thoughts, comparing his martial artist and hunter status windows, feeling how different they were. The martial artist window only showed his status. It had no special functions, other than checking his level, internal energy, and external techniques, and seeing the status of others, which was a huge help for those using martial arts energy. That was it. On the other hand, the hunter status window displayed everything from skills to stamina and mana. Best of all, the interface was user-friendly and had many detailed functions. He secretly wondered if the personalities and approaches of the two systems were so different because they were created by two independent entities, but they had such similar capabilities. If the saint was the one who brought the hunter system to humanity. Thinking this far, Shin Hyun suddenly froze. He broke into a cold sweat, then continued the rest of his thoughts in his head. The one who brought me to the world of martial arts was the heavenly martial god. A month later, with Lee Ji-hai's help, Shin Hyun had been clearing dungeons to level up, and he had already reached level 22. As for Eun Seol, she was having a bit of a headache dealing with the 365 meridian points in the human body, but she had eventually learned how to regulate her internal energy. After all, Eun Seol was a bit past the age to start learning martial arts, but I guess something is better than nothing. Shin Hyun thought of a way. He looked at his sister and flashed a sinister smile. Eun Seol, don't worry, just keep vomiting and bleeding, whatever it takes. The girl was bewildered, not understanding what kind of nonsense her brother was spewing, but as soon as he finished, she started screaming loud enough to bring the house down. Turns out, the method Shin Hyun had come up with was to release internal energy by force, channeling it through her meridians and clearing out the impurities. Thanks to that, Eun Seol had actually gone up a level. Her combat ability is actually shaping up to be something decent. Shall we start settling accounts? Cha Shin Hyun, do you want to go on a date with me? That was the line Lee Ji-hai uttered after reuniting with her ally after a month, causing the guy to almost choke. He folded his arms and replied calmly, completely unfazed. That's the first date offer I've ever received in my life. But I don't feel anything at all. What a waste of a girl, really. Lee Ji-hee tried to swallow her pride and explained that a new rank 10 dungeon had opened in Bukyeon, which meant they needed a team of high-level hunters to handle it. It's definitely not a place for a level 20 hunter to go solo. To put it simply, she's basically saying you're way too low level for this, man. You know how it goes. Sometimes you have to hold your tongue to keep the peace. But he still had to listen to the end as Lee Ji-hye explained that the goal this time was to control the number of dangerous dungeons. She said they were high level, and she wanted him to get stronger as fast as possible as a hunter. It sounded a bit fishy, but since the money was already in his pocket, he went along with it. It's not every day a pretty girl offers to carry you, quite literally. So, obviously, he agreed, but he still had to give her a hard time first. Shin Hyun swirled his teacup like an old man. Then, leaning in close, he asked, I get it now. No wonder you've been helping me out so much. So it was all for an alliance? You just want to raise me up into a powerful hunter and then... It sounded like he was being interrogated, but honestly, she did have an agenda. Nobody gives away freebies, so Lee Ji-hee didn't even try to hide it. She told him exactly what she wanted. It was all about the Sun Festival, an annual event hosted by the 10,000 Guild and the Dawn Guild. It's like a friendly competition to see who has the best training grounds in South Korea. On the surface, it looks like it's held to foster harmony between the two guilds, but the truth is, it's a chance for them to scope out the enemy's strength and decide when to go for the kill. You could even call it a purge. It's like a powder keg just waiting to blow. After hearing the reason, Shin Hyun was curious and asked her how things got this messy. Wasn't it just a simple power struggle in the beginning? Lee Ji-hye gently poured some tea and continued, saying it was all Park Ta-hoon's fault. It wasn't like this before, but suddenly he went power crazy, spouting nonsense about how they had to obey some heavenly war god. As soon as he heard heavenly war god, Shin Hyun jumped up and shouted, The heavenly war god? Is he actually here? What kind of relationship does he have with Park Ta-hoon? Lee Ji-hye jumped in surprise, throwing her hands up as if surrendering and said, Stay calm. I don't have a clue. I just heard a rumor that he received a message from a martial artist's status window. But nobody can see someone else's status window, so who knows what the truth is. Not missing a beat, Lee Ji-hye went right back to complaining about that guy. She recounted how things used to be peaceful and finished with a lethal blow. Participate in the Sun Festival as a disciple of the Dawn Guild. Seeing he wasn't quite sold yet, she kept attacking his conscience, bringing up the fact that Chairman Kong Jin had already kicked the bucket just to make him feel guilty. It was enough to give him a headache. Shin Hyun nodded just to get it over with. If he let her keep talking, he'd probably lose his mind. Getting that agreement, Lee Ji-hye was visibly thrilled. She pulled out 6 orbs containing the 6 sorcery skills he'd requested, plus a bonus of some high-level mage and sorcerer skills. Not bad, I guess. Shin Hyun rubbed his chin, thinking, I do need to outshine Park Ta-hoon in a few ways. That's a win, right? But he hadn't even felt like a winner yet before a mountain of paperwork was slammed in his face. Shin Hyeon shouted in frustration, "What is all this?" Lee Ji-hye sat there crunching numbers, explaining that this was the legal paperwork to prove his official relationship and title. As a disciple of the Dawn Guild, obviously. It's not like those martial artists who just talk big and can swear brotherhood by cutting their palms whenever they feel like it. Shin Hyeon felt like his brain was going to explode from this world. I even had to create a one-man guild just to form this damn alliance. Regardless of whether he understood what she was saying or not, he just watched Lee Ji-hye pick up the bag and flash a deceptively innocent smile. Guess how much these orbs cost? I bet it's worth more than an entire house. Once you get it, just sign here. Pressed into a corner like this. Shin Hyeon had nowhere left to run. Fine, I'll sign. Who's afraid? A guild name is just a formality anyway. I can just fill in whatever. And with that thought in mind, the infinite one-man guild was born. The paperwork was done, and soon enough, the two of them were a couple of lovebirds diving into a dungeon to farm mobs. Looking at the monsters he'd seen a million times before, Shin Hyeon groaned, "I feel like all I ever do is go back and forth between my house and the dungeon. I just got here and I'm already over it." Lee Ji-hye tried to comfort him. "You look like a model student who never misses a class. Anyway, don't forget to be careful. These guys aren't strong, but they are infinite. It didn't matter if they were infinite or finite. Whether 1,000 or 3,000 mobs showed up, Shin Hyeon was handling them just fine." A twisted smile appeared on his face as he unleashed a massive wave of magic from his hand. He retorted enthusiastically, "The more targets, the better for me." The monsters were skewered and fell like rain. Lee Ji-hye looked on, genuinely terrified, and blurted out in shock, "You only learned that skill a few hours ago. I wasn't going to pass up a chance to flex." "I'm Shin Hyeon, the infinite sorcerer, remember?" Then he turned to her with a puzzled look. "There's only one type of monster in this dungeon, right?" Even though Lee Ji-hye confirmed that since dungeons first appeared 13 years ago, millions have formed across the world. There has never been a case with two types of monsters. Not even one dungeon has ever had that happen. But he still feels like something is very off. Somewhere in Seoul, at the villa of the Twilight Guild leader Park Tae-hoon, he sits back, leisurely feeding his fish while listening to his subordinate Kim Chun-ho report on the status of the East Sun Guild. And the guy who's been getting a boost from the opposition, Shin Hyun, is brought up, along with the fact that he resurfaced after disappearing for 14 years, and coincidentally the chairman of the Cell Guild, Kang Jin, has retired. Park Tae-hoon raises a hand to signal his subordinate to stop. He pauses for a few seconds, then calmly explains to his bespectacled, but harmless, subordinate. Kang Jin, the guy who found him, didn't just retire and vanish. It seems he went to Seoul to get revenge for his son, but he ended up dead. Seeing the other guy still doesn't believe it, he takes off his hat, revealing a face and an expression that's a perfect 10, then emphasizes, "It was definitely Shin Hyun who killed him. That guy, did he come from the martial arts world? Truly a sharp one. Not even having met him yet, he already grasped the core point. It's enough to make Shin Hyun's ears itch while he's busy clearing mobs. He's so excited about his new skills that a whole hour has passed and he's still bursting with MP, ready to keep fighting." Lee Ji-hye stands nearby, terrified, not daring to get close, and timidly asks him a few questions about how the dungeon will be destroyed at this rate. Wait, the numbering indicates line 12 is split. Even though he's clearly in the zone, Shin Hyun tries to stroke his chin and acts like a professor to answer the pretty lady's concerns. "Among the magical skills you gave me, there's one called Vitality Reversal, right? Down in the martial arts world, once you reach level 35 in both internal and external cultivation, you obtain an immortal body, blah blah blah. Basically, I have an infinite circulating flow. If you have high-level martial arts, you can achieve anything. Case closed." After all that talk, he's still riding that high, so Shin Hyun decides to clear some small fries before kindly asking the boss for its head. Seeing the way he fights, Lee Ji-hye starts to get caught up in it too. She drops her worried expression, replacing it with an excited look, grabs her blade, and charges at the monsters in the middle. "I should do something to earn my keep, right?" she says, before gently delivering a few blows to their heads as the number of monsters keeps increasing. Lee Ji-hye plans to raise the danger alert level even higher when she returns. These things are getting harder to fight as they fly. She looks at the terrain and starts mapping out a formation in her head. While lost in calculations, a sudden roar overhead startles her. She looks up and stands frozen, wondering what this massive monster is. How on earth can there be two types of monsters in one dungeon? But it's not like they care what she thinks. They just see prey and attack. These things even know how to use magic, catching Lee Ji-hai off guard. She can only scramble to run. Just then the hero, no, Shin-hyun, where is he? He swoops in, scoops her up in his arms, and says with such excitement, as if he'd been waiting for this forever, it finally appeared. Oh, so he actually knew. While researching the dungeon, Shin-hyun had discovered an irregular monster. Lee Ji-hae, hearing him speak so calmly, gets angry and snaps back. So you're saying you let them hang around here? Even though you knew about it? Well, yeah, pretty much. Shin-hyun was waiting for it. Don't you always save the boss for last? He looks at her and tries to reassure her. I know you're frozen with fear, but you can handle this, right? Stay calm. Plus, it's dinner time. Pick a menu. You're thinking about food in this situation? What a great partner. Let's go with chicken for the main course today. Shin-hyun says excitedly and takes off at the speed of light. Lee Ji-hae can't get close and can only communicate via telepathy, but it seems he's too hyped up to have no time to respond, and this dungeon keeps leading Lee Ji-hae around. From one surprise to the next, not only are there two types of monsters, but they're pouring out from the gate behind her. Before she can grasp the situation, Shin-hyun suddenly stops moving. Seeing the sudden turn of events, she has no choice but to act and create a place for him to temporarily avoid danger. As for what Shin-hyun plans to do next, she has no idea because he's staring intently at the massive bosses that are ignoring the smaller ones to attack. Lee Ji-hae realizes the smaller monsters aren't moving on their own. They're being commanded by the big ones. The proof is that the small monsters are using their own bodies to block attacks for the big ones. She doesn't have an IQ of negative infinity, so she quickly finds a way to end this battle. That is, to skewer the bosses first. Her teammate is floating in the air, not revealing what's next, so as a guild leader, she has to step into danger. At the very least, she has to protect him. Thought becomes action. Lee Ji-hae climbs onto the bodies of the smaller monsters to approach the leader. They are so focused on Shin-hyun they don't even realize she's on their backs. But within a few seconds, they notice something is off and turn to attack, catching her off guard. But in the misfortune, there's a bit of luck. The one paying attention to her is the boss, Lily He. This time, screw the rules. Boss or no boss, she looks at it affectionately and says a few parting words on behalf of the unlucky monster. Ha! So you finally noticed me, huh? But it's already too late. As long as it's a one-on-one fight, no monster is a match for me. Lee Ji-hae leaped down, instantly unleashing her shadow dance skill, slicing straight through the monster's head. Then she wondered to herself when she'd finally be able to take them all down. It was a question with no answer, but it didn't need one anyway, because the one who would actually take them down sure as hell wasn't her. High above, Shin-hyun summoned his power blades without needing any energy source. He was in a divine state, controlling thousands of magic blades all by himself. Shin-hyun flicked his hand coldly and said, "Let's end this here." After that rain of blades, a ton of loot stones spilled out. Shin-hyun picked one up to examine it, then curiously asked Lee Ji-hae about them, except right then, she was so lost in her own thoughts that she didn't hear a word he said. In her head, she was juggling everything from conducting a full dungeon investigation, to worrying about Park Ta-hoon attacking while she wasn't looking, and so on. Shin-hyun called out to her, and when that didn't work, he walked over and shoved the stone right in Lee Ji-hae's face to get her attention. Only then did she snap out of her daze and explain that it was a monster skill stone, and that he'd snagged something really valuable. It looked like a rare skill. A month had passed since the dungeon clear. Information about Shin-hyun was slowly spreading online, making everyone who saw it start whispering and buzzing. The guys at the guild were starting to get a massive headache. The management team was furious, holding an emergency meeting and screaming at their subordinates for not being able to find any trace of Shin-hyun. Where has he been for the last 14 years? What are his rank and class? Their shouting was deafening. Park Ta-hoon calmly finished his glass of wine, signaled them to sit down, and gave them instructions. We just need to nip the conflict in the bud. And his plan was to send his assistant to meet Shin-hyun privately and plant a bug to fish for information. But this assistant didn't seem very sharp, even though he brought up the death of Chairman Thuong-dong and promised to provide support, blathering on about how they'd help him just like they did for others, in exchange for Shin-hyun withdrawing from the Sun Festival. Shin-hyun wasn't interested. He actually had some praise for the guy's perspective. It was hard to argue with his logic. Even so, he still had to stand up, say no, and turn to leave without wasting any more time. I had too much going on to sit around chatting. Shin Hyun threw one blunt line back at him. I owe Lee Ji-hee a favor, and I couldn't care less about losing. You got that? The guy with glasses tried to brush it off and kept begging, but in the end, he was being watched by the guild leader who was hiding nearby. He scared the hell out of him. Chun-ho, huh? I thought I told you to drag that conversation out. As long as possible, but it looks like your eavesdropping was a waste of time. He walked up and patted his subordinate on the shoulder, his voice dropping to a low, intimidating tone, even though the guy in glasses was still scared out of his wits. But Park Ta-hoon leaned in close and asked a question that made him freeze up completely. Who the hell is he, really? Back on Lee Ji-hee's side, after hearing the report of the meeting, she looked bored. Then she smirked in satisfaction. They had already guessed that Park Ta-hoon would definitely be there, so it wasn't a surprise at all. Lee Ji-hee guessed that he was probably really worried now that things weren't going as planned. Pushing that aside, she thanked him for the dungeon incident earlier. If it weren't for him, she'd be dead and buried by now. They were having a pleasant chat when Shin Hyun suddenly changed his attitude and hung up abruptly, leaving Lee Ji-hee totally confused about what was happening. It turned out Eun Seon had been waiting for him for quite a while, to visit their parents' grave together. But unlike his sister's sorrow, Shin Hyun was blank, devoid of any emotion. You know, he was just too different from who he used to be. Even standing right in front of their parents' ashes, he couldn't shed a single tear. Eun Seon was disappointed. She didn't turn around but asked, Do you really not feel anything? I wasn't sad nor even slightly touched. Seeing he still had no reaction, she kept pushing. Hey, why aren't you saying anything? Shin Hyun didn't dare to face his sister. He could only apologize to hide the indifference on his face. Eun Seon was angry and hurt, sobbing out loud because of this drastic change. She covered her face, blaming him, and let out words that stung like a knife to the heart. I don't even know if you're still my brother anymore. Well, it's because too much time had passed. I guess you can't be like you used to be. It doesn't even matter anymore. Anyway, I've managed to live just fine on my own until now. What Eun Seon wanted right then was just some empathy from Shin Hyun, but he didn't understand that at all. Shin Hyun was silent for a moment, then suddenly received a message from the martial arts window that made him freeze. How can you still be human, Shin Hyun? These provocations made his blood boil. The other side kept sending messages. Don't resist in vain. If you need motivation, I can lend a hand. Now Shin Hyun had calmed down. He replied calmly to the person behind it, step by step. Who are you? Are you the heavenly war god? Shin Hyun challenged him. Even though the guy said he would take everything away from him again, Shin Hyun didn't give a damn. He wasn't afraid of anyone anymore. He quickly took off his tie and responded with a cocky, I'm the king of the world attitude. I don't know who you are or why you're doing this to me, but give it your best shot. If you can, I'll find you and tear you into 100,000 pieces. A few days later, the Sun Festival finally arrived. Everyone was incredibly excited. The festival's MC was a huge fan of the hunters, so she was absolutely pumped. She screamed her intro with all the energy she'd had since she was a baby, banging on the table as if she wanted to leap onto the stage. Hello, everyone! The day is finally here! Especially for those heroes about to head into the dungeons and hunt monsters. We've all been waiting for so long with burning passion, excitement, and anticipation for our hunters. Without further ado, let's get this started right now. The big event in South Korea, the Sun Festival, is beginning, followed by cheers and screams, upbeat background music, and fireworks exploding all over the sky. Looking at the spectacle outside, Shin Hyun couldn't help but marvel. It feels just like the Olympics or the World Cup. Lee Ji-hee, standing beside him, chimed in, Yeah, pretty much the same. To the public, the only thing they really care about are the hunters, after all. Then she changed the subject, asking if he was fighting with Eun Seol, because the vibe between the two of them when they arrived didn't seem right at all. What's more, she even flat-out blamed Shin Hyun for the mess. Hit right where it hurt, he felt a sharp pang of pain but didn't answer. Instead, he turned to her and said, Find me a quiet house with a garden, far away from everything. I need to move out. Man, this is getting intense. They haven't even been arguing for that long and he's already threatening to move out. Acting like a child, really. But that wasn't the case. Shin Hyun explained that he'd received a message from the martial arts system window. The heavenly war god might be watching them. So as long as he stayed near her, she would be in danger. Lee Ji-hee felt a massive headache coming on. What message? What getting out? She couldn't even process it, but still tried to talk him out of it. You should stay and protect her. That's better. But Shin Hyun wouldn't listen. For every word she said, he had 10 back. Man, it's a stroke of bad luck to have such a stubborn teammate. Lee Ji-hae felt so angry on Yoon Seol's behalf that she stood up and punched him after hearing Shin Hyun explain that the girl said she didn't need him and he didn't want to meddle in other people's family business. But if my brother said that to me, I'd definitely punch him. Shin Hyun, you don't understand your own sister as well as I do you? Captain Cha Yoon Seol. Just as she was hitting her stride, mid-philosophical speech, she was interrupted. An assistant suddenly burst in, shouting frantically, "Vice Guildmaster, are you in here? The event is about to start." It was such an awkward scene. 6 eyes stared at each other in total silence. Lee Ji-hae didn't say a word, just slowly pulled her hand back, pretended to be calm, and threatened the staff member. "Don't you know any manners?" Then she turned back to Shin Hyun and told him, "Don't go anywhere until I get back." On stage, the key members of the 2 guilds appeared one by one, flashy and glamorous. After the host's introduction, she was so excited she even emphasized that Vice Guild Master Lee Ji-hae and Guild Master Park Tae-hun used to work at the same guild, as if she was afraid someone didn't already know the gossip. Park Tae-hun flashed a professional smile and reached out to greet Lee Ji-hae politely, right before the expectant public. Lee Ji-hae was fuming but had to grin back in a friendly way. Outwardly, the 2 of them were chatting and laughing like they were the best of friends, but inside, they were using telepathy, vowing to wipe each other out the moment they saw an opening. Truly, a classic case of friendly on the outside, enemies on the inside. Lee Ji-hae looked at him and jabbed, "Vice Guildmaster, you've really leveled up. That little assassin who used to be my substitute has really grown up, hasn't he?" Park Tae-hun wasn't about to take that lying down. If you mess with his people, he bites back. He quickly shot back, "Still interested in the weakest ones, huh? I heard you're busy polishing some new recruits?" Their endless bickering was cut short by a very affectionate handshake and the official announcement that the Sun Festival had begun. The solo matches quickly took place amidst the enthusiastic cheers of the audience. Before long, it was the 5th individual match in the rookie tournament. Victory seemed to be leaning towards the White Tiger Guild. Park Tae-hun picked up his wine glass and laughed arrogantly. Typical Dawn Guild. It's been a while since Nam Seongmo had to fight an opponent for this long. But regardless, she's not much of a threat. I'm heading out now. Hopefully, the next match will actually spark my interest. Watching his back, Lee Ji-hae just wanted to charge over and stab him a few times to shut that mouth of his. Waiting for Park Tae-hun outside was Jang Sung-hyuk. He asked impatiently, "Guildmaster, when can I kill her?" Seeing that the other man didn't have much patience, Park Tae-hun flashed a chilling smile and replied, "Relax, Sung-hyuk, it'll be soon. Everything has its time. For now, her name is Cha Eun-seol, right? I'm going to go say hello to her." Oh, so even a guildmaster is superstitious. I don't know about his guild, but that mouth of his is definitely asking for a beating. Meanwhile, Eun-seol was in the waiting room preparing for her next event, survival archery. Her teammates didn't seem to like her very much. Because of the rumors surrounding the Red Wolf dungeon, Eun-seol had become the partner killer. It was sickening to hear. Eun-seol got angry and snapped at the guys talking behind her back. "If you're going to say it so I can hear, why don't you say it to my face?" She was already angry at her brother for constantly avoiding her, and now she had to deal with this nonsense. Absolutely infuriating. Just as she was boiling over, a staff member ran in and told her someone wanted to see her in the waiting room. She thought maybe her brother had come to make up. To her surprise, it was Lee Ji-hae. Seeing her, Yoon-seol's disappointment was plain on her face, and she asked irritably, "Why did you call me out here right before the competition?" Lee Ji-hae gave a bitter smile and replied coolly, "I just came to cheer you on," and she added that she'd come with Shin Hyun, but had no idea where he'd vanished to. Seeing that the other girl didn't react, she tried again. "Don't you think you two should resolve your misunderstanding?" Mentioning her brother made Yoon-seol's blood boil. Her attitude changed instantly. She said without any politeness, "Honestly, I don't like you at all, Vice Guildmaster. You seem to be using him to get what you want." Thinking back, he decided to become a hunter right after he met her. He hadn't even been back to his normal life for very long. He shouldn't have become a hunter at all. What on earth is he trying to achieve by becoming a hunter and chasing after all that power? He's chasing something he won't even tell me about. It's like he's not the brother I knew anymore. He feels so strange, so distant. Lee Jae-hee was stunned, not by the sudden, fierce outburst from her subordinate, but by the sight of those tears. Just as the girl started crying, the announcement that the test was beginning cut them off, pulling them back to reality. Lee Jae-hee still tried to use the remaining seconds to explain for him. Shin-hyun, I know he didn't want to change this much. I've been through that suffocating pressure too. Shin-hyun fell into a hell where he could lose his life at any moment, and he was stuck there for such a long time. Shin-hyun couldn't keep his sanity, and perhaps he just didn't want to show that dark side of himself to his younger sister. As she spoke, Lee Jae-hee thought of her own miserable, struggling past. But just when she thought she was helping, Yoon-sol just snapped. She turned to walk away, but she called back in a tone filled with exhaustion. How strange. Why do I have to hear about my brother from the Vice Guildmaster? He must see you as someone more reliable than a mere Vice Guildmaster, someone on his own level. Yoon-sol walked off. Lee Jae-hee angrily called out to Shin-hyun, who was hiding behind her, and started laying into him. She grabbed his collar and shouted, "You're no different from Park Tae-hun. Why can't you just be honest for once? Captain, Shin-hyun, she's not the little kid in your memories anymore. Do you really think hiding your intentions is what's best for your sister? Follow me. I'll show you a side of your sister you know nothing about." She's acting more like his mother than a guild official. What kind of ally is this powerful anyway? The survival archer round began immediately after the starting shot. It was almost time. The 6 teams from Dawn and Twilight were about to clash. Yoon-sol kept getting notifications about enemies approaching her teammates, but she didn't seem to care. Instead, Yoon-sol was still furious about her idiot brother. She punched the wall, gently, lovingly, then grumbled about that damn brother who still treated her like a helpless little girl. Ignoring her teammate's warnings that enemies were within 300 meters and they needed to wait for backup, she refused immediately and replied, "It's fine, I'll take them out myself." Before anyone could stop her, she drew her bow, aimed straight at the enemy, and landed a shot right in the heart. A notification rang out. The 6th member of Twilight is out. The notification echoed instantly. Yoon-sol stared at him as he lay there, muttering to herself, "Don't look down on me, you idiot brother." For a split second, she remembered her past. The day her life as a happy child turned into that of an orphan, despised by everyone. Back then, Yoon-sol always insisted that her brother must still be alive somewhere, and that he would appear before her any day now. But the truth is often cruel. No matter how much she prayed, it never came true. And it was on that very day. The goddess appeared and warned of the day when nightmares would descend upon humanity and they would have to evolve. Yoon-sol didn't believe it at first, but no matter how stubborn she was, this ridiculous world had already become just that. Growing up, she earned the archer class after an aptitude test and joined the Hunter Academy. After being raised by the state, she went through a school life filled with bullying just because she had no parents. She had to fight hard to stand up against that crowd. Then, with her natural talent, Yoon-sol joined the top guild that everyone wanted to be in, Dawn. She did it to survive in the days without her brother. To keep from being controlled by weak thoughts, she even challenged herself, but that still wasn't enough. Yoon-sol shouted in anger, "But I can't forgive you for treating me like I'm still just a kid. I'm not that weak." After shouting, she felt a weight lift from her heart, but Yoon-sol realized the surroundings felt off. Everything was eerily quiet. She hurriedly tried to contact her teammates, but there was no response. As she panicked, a volley of arrows flew out of nowhere. Yoon-sol spun and leaped into the air to dodge. Caught off guard, she was accidentally hit in the arm by an arrow. "Everyone stop! We found the target!" A voice from the opposite side, combined with the situation, made her realize a few things. The arrows were supposed to be blunted, but her arm had been pierced, and blood was pouring out. "They're using real arrows?" Yoon-sol gasped. The man across from her saw that his target was wounded and gloated, "Don't hope for anyone to save you. We interfered a bit to make sure the camera signal wouldn't reach this spot." Oh, so this guy is looking for death. Don't know who's killing who yet. Yoon-sol smiled a wicked smile, yanked the arrow from her arm, looked at it, and muttered something. Terrifying. Who knows? I've never really relied on something like that in my whole life. She drew her bow. 4 arrows were already knocked. Her gaze was cold, unblinking, and determined as she aimed and declared, "Today is the day of your funeral. Let's begin. You're the losers. Using her archer skill, she gifted each of them an arrow filled with love. "Kill her!" They panicked and barked orders at each other. Yun-Sol did a somersault and landed. 3 arrows hit their marks. She gritted her teeth, blaming herself for missing one person. Conversely, the enemy was terrified to the core. He couldn't believe a sniper could cause that much damage. Fighting in close quarters against a professional athlete like that? This is going to be a total disaster in this situation. The idea that a squad made up entirely of soldiers could actually pull off a win. Yun-Sol, it's completely hopeless. Just as she was about to take out the rest of the group, someone tried to ambush her. She instantly ducked, dodged, and drew her bow, planting an arrow right back into him. "You arrogant little bitch!" The guy let out a furious roar, but before he could even finish his sentence, he was sent straight to the afterlife. Now, only the commander was left. Yun-Sol was going to wipe the floor with the rest of them. The two of them locked eyes, bows raised at each other. But Yun-Sol didn't notice there was still one more guy hiding behind. Before she could make a move, he launched a fatal strike. Yun-Sol was caught off guard. No time to react. In this moment, she could only stare in shock. "Use your martial arts!" Suddenly, her brother's voice echoed in her ears. Yun-Sol snapped back to reality, broke the bow in half with her bare hands, and lunged forward to smash her fist into the opponent's face without mercy. She landed gracefully and looked at the last guy with a look of pure affection. "All right then. What should I do with you? You're the last one left standing, aren't you? Say your last prayers, 'cause I'm gonna beat you to a pulp." Facing such a heavy hitter, the guy started shaking like a leaf, stammering a plea for mercy. But it was too late. Yun-Sol's teammates had arrived and finished him off for her. The tournament results were updated instantly. The Hungdong team won completely. Only, it was strange. Things had gotten weird in the death swap zone. Hunter Yun-Sol had taken down a total of 4 players from the Trang Van Guild. The people who had looked down on her earlier were now rushing over, fawning all over her with non-stop praise. What a bunch of hypocrites. They flip-flop faster than a pancake. Yun-Sol looked up, a proud glint in her eye, whispering to herself, "If I could, I truly wouldn't want to accept any help at all. But yeah, thanks to you, I survived." The flawless performance had come to an end. Lee Ji-hai turned to Shin Hyun, voice full of excitement. "Did you see that?" The young man pretended to cough, then started talking nonsense. "Yeah, I saw it. That she escaped the crisis thanks to the martial arts I taught her." Lee Ji-hae was so annoyed she could burst. "That's not what happened, Shin Hyun, and you know it." But he was just teasing her on purpose. I knew he was just messing around a little. Now he acknowledged that Yun-Sol had grown up and become much stronger. He promised himself he wouldn't treat her like a kid anymore. Shin Hyun stroked his chin, feeling proud. "That's my sister for you, holy cow." But back then, he was the one who called her the weakest little sister. Over on the side, Park Tae-hun had been observing the fight, not missing a single movement. He was so shocked his eyes were wide open. He could barely get a few words out. That technique, that martial arts. After that save, it seemed the sibling ice-cold dynamic had thawed out. Yun-Sol crossed her arms, looking at her brother, demanding his thoughts on her performance. Shin Hyun felt like acting too dramatic would be too much, so he pretended not to hear and just kept drinking his water. Yun-Sol wasn't having it and kept poking at him until he finally spoke up. Sighing, Shin Hyun decided to show his true feelings. He set down his tea and looked at Yun-Sol with genuine warmth. He apologized for hiding everything, saying he just wanted to be the brother he used to be, and so on and so on. Shin Hyun told her why he wanted to become a hunter. Yun-Sol understood him a little better now. She held out her hand, making him promise that from now on, he wouldn't hide anything from her again. Shin Hyun gave a relieved smile and hooked his pinky with hers, promising he'd never do that again. All the misunderstandings were cleared up. He smiled brightly and said his nickname wasn't just any old thing, but the Supreme Sword Emperor. The announcement that the Great War was about to begin echoed through the air. Shin Hyun quickly left to prepare for the next round. In the waiting room, the Guildmaster of Hungdong stopped by to boost the participants' morale, especially to meet Shin Hyun. The old man kept shaking his hand, rambling on and on. Shin Hyun stood there, helpless, and used telepathy to ask Lee Ji-hae, "Is this the puppet boss you mentioned?" She replied immediately, "Don't underestimate him. He might look like that, but he's already level 60. He hit her with a closing line that made her shut up. But he's still weaker than you." Other hunters participating started crowding around, trying to make friends, which left him feeling completely exhausted. Just then, an uninvited guest appeared. The whole group jumped in surprise, turning around to stammer out his name. Park Tae-hoon put on his most charming pageant winner face. "Oh my, am I disturbing your rest? It's just a friendly match, isn't it? I just dropped by to say hello. Is there a problem?" The group felt awkward just listening to him. Seeing that, he dropped the act and got straight to the point, stepping closer to Shin Hyun to play nice. The reason he came there was actually to dig for information about him. But his heavenly martial arts technique didn't resonate with him at all, which left Park Tae-hoon feeling a bit puzzled. He couldn't figure out who Eon Sol could have learned martial arts from if not him, and who could reach this level of skill from the start without having been through the martial arts world. Shin Hyun suddenly fixed him with a sharp hawk-like stare and stepped forward to respond. "And it seems I owe you for what happened between my sister and your hunters in the Archer survival." Ignoring his nonsense as if it were unrelated, Shin Hyun used a cold, icy gaze to threaten him. "I won't forget everything that happened. I am definitely going to take my revenge. Whether he was involved with the heavenly war god or not, that's secondary. The main issue is that he dared to lay a hand on your younger sister," he said, before turning on his heel and walking out, adding, "I'll put on a spectacular show that won't disappoint you, Shin Hyun." Leaving the distinguished guest standing there, bewildered and furious, the man silently thought to himself that he would definitely wipe the name Twilight off the face of the earth. On stage, the female MC excitedly announced that this was the most anticipated part of the Sun Festival. The main event, the grand battle between Dawn and Twilight, was finally beginning. As the vanguard of Dawn, the super rookie who had become the hottest topic across the entire country, he had personally shaken hands with Vice Guildmaster Lee Ji-hee. Infinite Guild leader, Hunter Shin Hyun, stepped out to a warm welcome from the audience. His professional level and achievements remained a mysterious, unrevealed question mark. This left everyone extremely curious. On the other side, the vanguard of the Twilight Guild also stepped out, introduced as the genius mage of the Twilight Guild. A man with a hot, charismatic presence, the Fire Dragon King, Ryu Sungjin. "Just as the rumors said, you've got an arrogant look on your face. I'm going to roast you," he sneered, looking at Shin Hyun. Then he let out a few cocky, arrogant remarks. The announcement echoed, and amidst the audience's applause, both prepared to clash in a serious match. Park Tae-hoon used telepathy to instruct his subordinate to drag the fight out and expose all the hidden powers the opponent was concealing. But as for who would be the one exposed, that remained to be seen. Right from the start, Shin Hyun soared into the air, shattering the rumors that he was hiding his profession. Because flight was the signature skill of the wizard profession, was this a provocative move to flaunt his high-level class? The guild leader of Dawn looked over at Lee Ji-hee and asked, "Is this some kind of strategy? Does he have a plan?" She frowned and replied, "I don't think so. He probably just wants to show off." And as it turned out, Lee Ji-hee was right. After quickly calculating the opponent's level and comparing it to his own, Shin Hyun was still slightly ahead. If he used martial arts, the guy wouldn't even be worth a second glance. But now he had to use his hunter powers, so it was a bit of an even match. However, what really got Shin Hyun excited was that guy, Park Tae-hoon, sitting over there. "So, you're targeting me? How cute." Shin Hyun chuckled smugly and continued, "You're dying of curiosity, wondering if I'll use martial arts or something else, aren't you? Keep staring until your eyes pop out then. I'll never let you see it, you bastard." As soon as he finished speaking, Shin Hyun created a barrage of energy orbs and rained them down like Christmas presents. The opponent wasn't a pushover either. He countered with a flaming shield. "Isn't this mana energy a basic skill of the wizard class? Is it possible our investigation hasn't even started yet?" Ryu Sungjin wondered to himself. When caught by the surprise attack, he immediately blocked it, then swung his arms to counter with blazing flames, weaving them around like a cloak. He assumed Shin Hyun was a wizard and that he had already prepared a counter trick. There are 3 classes higher than a wizard. The Warless class, which focuses on skill sets and item crafting, known as crafters, who have the ability to combine elemental properties into magic. Those who fight skillfully are called sorcerers, and those who can shape magic into phenomena and concepts are called godcasters. Whether it's teleporting or flying in midair, all 3 seem more like supernatural entities than mere mages. In normal combat, they usually stand back to support, very different from the vanguards. but occasionally they can unleash fatal blows and become a true source of terror. Yet hanging back and observing was not Ryu Sungjin's style. He excitedly charged forward with all his might, shouting, "If you're still hiding any skills, you'd better show them right now. Otherwise, take this and get out of here." He unleashed a destructive fire strike, an incredible display of martial arts combined with fearsome fire magic honed from a very young age. The audience watched the battle, sweating bullets. They were terrified that Shin Hyun might be done for. They were shivering, thinking he hadn't even shown his true power yet. But no. I had the protagonist aura, so at this point, it didn't even scratch him. Shin Hyun stood still without losing a single hair, though the ground beneath his feet was completely shattered. Ryu Sungjin wasn't satisfied. In a rage, he unleashed his ultimate skill, screaming at his opponent to show every single move if he didn't want to die. Shin Hyun still acted nonchalant, as if saying, "Catch me if you can." He looked him straight in the eyes, gave a slight thumbs down, and taunted him. "You've got a lot of surprises, don't you? If you want to see my ace in the hole, then—" Before Shin Hyun could finish his sentence, the opponent's attack vanished in a bizarre fashion. The stands started buzzing. They were stunned and bewildered, unable to understand what was happening. Some even claimed it had been crushed by some god. Lee Jae-hee's face twisted as she cursed Shin Hyun under her breath for being such a pain and making everyone worry. High-level martial arts are indeed hard to distinguish from magic. The Fire Dragon King's strongest attack was nothing to Shin Hyun. Ryu Sungjin was just grass on the side of the road. How could a ditch ever compare to the ocean? I was furious and lunged at him, but it was useless. Even after unleashing a series of incredibly fierce attacks, the end result was still Shin Hyun blocking everything with ease. It was quite intense. Who would have thought a battle like this would be a duel between mages? Shin Hyun taught him a few basic moves, then leaned in close and answered his question about how he did it. "I've been practicing martial arts for quite a long time now." "Like this, kid, is this all you can do? Is this the limit of your ability? Compared to your confidence, you're really weak, aren't you?" Ryu Sungjin has truly lost his mind. Backing off with a suicide bombing mentality, he summons a massive dragon right in front of Shin Hyun, unleashing heat intense enough to level the entire area. It tears through the arena like a storm, swallowing him whole. Has he been helplessly crushed by this unbelievable attack? Oh, turns out he hasn't. 10 fire dragons couldn't even scratch Shin Hyun's defenses. Even though he's immune to hot and cold, he's not some baked sweet potato. So enough playing around. A surge of magic erupts from Shin Hyun, powerful enough to crush the dragon. He took down Ryu Sungjin in a heartbeat. Truly a living example that if you talk trash too early, you're gonna get smashed. The crowd goes wild, whispering and calling him a god because of how he flaunted his power. Park Tae-hun looks sour, like he's eaten a chili pepper, and asks his subordinate who's up next. Upon hearing it's the knight Choi Ji-hyung, his expression relaxes, and he tells him to use that thing. Choi Ji-hyung is known as the spearhead of the guild's Central Plains defense, appearing in cool armor with his lance in hand. With the nickname Mage Butcher, the name says it all, he's never lost to a single mage. Although warriors usually have a high win rate against mages, that's not certain anymore. The moment the match starts, the announcement rings out. Choi Ji-hyung lunges forward immediately, using physical enhancement on his entire body for a direct assault. Face to face, eye to eye, Shin Hyun skillfully dodges and closes in. He just didn't expect this guy to be not only fast, but also highly defensive, so he decides to fight in mid-air to counter him, but before he can even take off. And just as he does fly up, the enemy is right on his tail. Choi Ji-hyung leaps into the air without hesitation, slamming down a blow that shatters Shin Hyun's defenses. This repair crew is definitely going to be furious about the arena floor. They must be really pissed off. Shin Hyun lies there looking stunned and unable to move, then mutters, "Wow, I don't remember the last time someone managed to knock me down. Has it been a few hundred years?" He wobbles as he stands, clutching his head in apparent pain. If I could use martial arts, I'd take on 10 guys like this. Still, he seems to be enjoying it. Shin Hyun slashes his finger through the air, throwing his opponent from one side of the arena to the other, as if he's playing with a toy, unable to withstand this attack. Choi Ji-hyung's mask shatters, revealing his pale face. Everyone keeps asking each other what is going on as his mysterious power overwhelms the opponent in a split second, answering the million-dollar questions of the curious onlookers. The power I possess isn't gravity, but attraction and repulsion, an original technique I developed after much reflection on the reversal of yin and yang. Explaining it in detail is complicated, but that's the gist of it. I can channel force to pull the opponent toward me. Before Shin Hyun can finish, the guy interrupts him. You made a mistake. You shouldn't have closed the distance between us. Seeing the tables turned, Park Tae-hun exclaims excitedly, "Ha ha! Shin Hyun is going to die right here!" Shin Hyun doesn't even realize what's happening until he receives a bright red notification warning that he cannot use magic for the next 10 seconds. Talk about a self-sabotaging moment. Luckily, he's agile enough to dodge, otherwise he would have been done for. And here I thought he was writing his own ending. Just as the battle is reaching its climax, Choi Ji-hyung weakly counters with a never-before-seen technique. Lee Ji-hai in the stands notices something is wrong. She keeps using telepathy to urge Shin Hyun, run away immediately. Before things get worse, the match doesn't matter anymore. Give up and save your life. But running or giving up? Those words have never existed in Shin Hyun's dictionary. Regardless of whatever bull the enemy is pulling, he stands still without blinking, and suddenly he seems like a different person, his gaze turning ice cold. A wicked smile appears, accompanied by a terrifying burst of energy that makes the entire arena shiver. The Heavenly Martial Arts Foundation technique suddenly resonates with this terrifying power. A tremor so massive and horrifying, unlike anything that Park Tae-hun has ever felt before. Choi Ji-hyung is bound in mid-air, looking bewildered and asking himself, where am I? Who am I? Isn't my anti-magic spell still active? Choi Ji-hyung is so confused he has to shout and ask, what kind of skill is this? Shin Hyun, from above, slowly descends and explains it all in one breath, so the guy in front of him understands. That's not a skill, it's martial arts. And if he's curious about what martial arts are, well, after this is over, go find Park Tae-hun and ask him, and the energy currently shackling him, which only he can feel. That is the pinnacle of swordsmanship known as Heart Sword. It's the power that can be harnessed once external techniques reach level 40, the manifestation of the Heart Sword. Or, as they call it, the human will of this world. When a person reaches this level, they can kill or tear through the heavens and earth just by their sheer will. Hearing Shin Hyun talk like that, it sounds absolutely surreal. Who knows if Choi Ji-hyung can even process a single word in this situation. He intended to end this cleanly, but doing it this way is boring. He has to pay the guy back in full for everything he's received. The world is dangerous. Blood debts must be paid in blood. Shin Hyun has to teach these sore losers of future generations a lesson. That's the righteous way. And just as those words left his lips, his hand was already on Choi Ji-hyung's abdomen. He lightly extracted a few drops of blood, excitedly imagining Park Tae-hun watching from afar, stunned and bewildered, wondering if he was actually seeing this. He reminded himself to burn this scene into his eyes. This was exactly what he had been dying to see. Supreme martial arts? Oh, for heaven's sake, what a mind-blowing sight. Choi Ji-hyung took the full force of the punch. Who knows if he kicked the bucket? After the match, Shin Hyun gave up the remaining fights, claiming his magic had been completely drained. Could it be that the guild would dominate the Sun Festival? Not twilight, not dawn, but infinite? That was the question on everyone's mind during the following matches. Twilight lost with a score of 3-2, and the Sun Festival concluded. Known as an elite hunter, Shin Hyun became an overnight internet sensation. The netizens couldn't stop talking about him. Twilight, previously considered stronger than Dawn, had been dethroned, and the guild leader locked himself in his room. In a state of mental collapse, terrified and trembling like a scaredy cat, he kept replaying that moment in his mind. Not only was he paralyzed by fear, but he was also humiliated. Even though it was just a fleeting glimpse, the power displayed in that moment was not something he could deal with. That was what he had to keep telling himself, even though he couldn't accept it at all. Suddenly, Park Tae-hun seemed to have figured something out. He stood up, grabbed his suit jacket, and went outside, telling his assistant to come along. Chun-ho, called to join, fearfully asked what the hell the captain wanted to do at this hour. Was the psychological shock making him lose his mind? Park Tae-hun gave a comforting smile, adjusted his buttons, and declared in a condescending tone, "Where else? We're going to meet the god of war." A week after the Sun Festival ended, things didn't seem very peaceful at all. Because of the rising star Shin Hyun, the entire Dawn Guild office was in complete chaos. They were constantly bombarded with calls and spam emails, literally endless. Over 328 inquiries were sent, along with 800 emails and other stuff, mostly from reporters and people hoping to join the Infinite Guild. There were 8 partnership requests, 43 advertising offers, and so on. The assistant had turned down almost everything, except for one case he was about to report. Just as he was about to finish that special case, staff outside were pounding on the door, calling for the secretary and the director, making him spin like a top. Shin Hyun was fed up with the current situation. I hated this kind of meaningless noise more than anything, so he complained a little to Lee Ji-hee. Even though it was late, she apologized. Lee Ji-hee suddenly cut through the heavy atmosphere. She felt suffocated and very guilty because she didn't want his identity to be exposed back then. That's why she had impulsively told him not to use his martial arts, even though it was a neck-and-neck situation. Seeing the vulnerability in the beautiful girl's eyes, Shin Hyun didn't like it at all. He told her not to worry about it, saying it was nothing. Park Tae-hun, no matter what, wouldn't dare use martial arts against him because he surely realized the difference in power by now. And naturally, he wouldn't be able to act arrogant for quite a while as the vice leader of the Dawn Guild. Lee Ji-hee bowed to show her respect and uttered a sincere thank you. Turning to him, she curiously asked Shin Hyun why he rejected all the requests, but agreed to the invitation from the Jeju Island Association. He was in a hurry because his younger sister was waiting. Walking out, he muttered, "I'm sick and tired of this urban dungeon. The level doesn't even go up, that's why. Plus, it's Jeju Island, isn't it? A family trip is the best, right?" Just as Shin Hyun had said, the moment his sister Eun Seun saw the ocean, she was as excited as a 3-year-old, running everywhere to explore everything. She suggested a list of food, though it was questionable if she could shove all of it into her stomach. While they were happily excited, someone suddenly shouted, "Guild leader Cha Shin Hyun!" They were startled. Oh, it turned out to be the Jeju Island Association representative, bringing his burning love to welcome them. Looking at the behavior of these fanboys, Shin Hyun slightly regretted it, wondering if it was too late to turn back. The guy rushed over to him, shaking his hand repeatedly, asking for an autograph, and then giving him those sparkling, star-filled eyes. I even promised to buy an idol t-shirt, how absurd. Fortunately, this guy still paid attention to the little sister on the side, otherwise Yoon Seon would have become a total wallflower. With time running out, they quickly gave them the schedule and moved out immediately. First things first, one must eat to keep the soul together, so starting with a food tour was the right call. On Park Tae-hoon's side, he had people tailing Shin Hyun 24/7, except when he was in the bathroom. After learning he went to the island, he seemed very excited. He took off his glasses and told his underlings to, "Show some guts, guys. It's time to get to work. Welcome to the trap I've laid out." Shin Hyun thought, this guy really has vision. Knowing he's about to head to his grave, he's digging his own hole to depart in. Before long, they arrived. The Jonghyun group on Jeju Island welcomed the two, the orange-haired woman from earlier and the Damla guild leader, Kim Hazim. This guy and that nephew of his were cut from the same cloth. As soon as he saw Shin Hyun, he rushed over to shake his hand warmly. Then he turned to his nephew and told him to bring out what they had prepared, boasting about the specialties of Jeju Island. Eun Seon was drooling, eagerly waiting for black pork or dagambari, grouper. The two men brought out a plate, acting mysterious, and even added, "You'll never forget the taste once you try it." That made Eun Seon even more excited. She stared fixedly at the covered plate, waiting for the fragrant meat to appear, only to have a tangerine slapped in her face, making Eun Seon want to draw a bow and take out this pair of uncle and nephew right then and there. She had to stay calm, extremely calm. She had to chant it 10 times just to keep from skewering them. While peeling the tangerine, she sat there sullenly, listening to these guys explain the business. Despite everything, Eon's soul still couldn't shake off her anger. Kim Hajim got straight to the point. The situation on Jeju Island is a total mess. They used to have an autonomous hunter system. But after those two major guilds revolted, the Korean hunter scene got completely split up. If they somehow get dragged into the conflict between those two guilds, they're definitely screwed. Blood will be spilled on Jeju. Since then, the Tamra Guild has always acted as a united front. That's the only reason they've managed to hold things together this long. But then, these high-danger dungeons started breaking out. Originally, there was only ever one dungeon with a danger level of 2 or higher. But within the last year, the number of these high-danger dungeons has spiked. You need at least a coordinated team of veteran hunters level 40 or above to clear them. Kim Hajim sighed and continued, "That's a wall that's impossible to climb. if we rely only on the strength of our alliance. Soon after, the high-level hunters leading the teams grew desperate, and all of them joined either the Dawn or Dusk guilds, applying the motto, always listening, rarely understanding. Shin Hyun nodded along as if he caught every single detail, but in reality, he was clueless, which is why he had to ask again. If a dungeon like that exists, shouldn't we just leave it alone? It's not like the monsters are crawling out and attacking us. The two elders looked like they wanted to flip the table. They shouted at the honored guest in a flurry. Look, if we do that, the ownership of the dungeons will fall into the hands of the big guilds. We're just trying to stop their expansion, that's all. At this point, his head was starting to throb. Looks like I need to pop a few more painkillers. These two elders were quite the tag team, playing off each other perfectly, calling Shin Hyun the bright star burning through the night, a precious gem, their savior, blah blah blah, just to get him to soften up and agree to help. Watching them, Shin Hyun just wanted to curse. Were these guys out of their minds? Since it had come to this, of course, he'd agree to join. Better to strike while the iron is hot. As they were about to leave, Eon Soul tugged on his sleeve and spoke up. Wait, brother, I have a problem that needs fixing first. Seeing that cold, sharp look in her eyes, I thought it was something urgent, nearly giving her brother a heart attack. Black pork and dagumbari, the girl shyly added, once her stomach had been filled with those delicious dishes. The whole group finally had the energy to drag themselves to the Aoseongsan dungeon to burn off some calories. Inside, a squad of hunters who had gone ahead were struggling miserably against a swarm of fire-poison monkeys. They were trying to fight back, but it looked more like a suicide mission. These things were spitting out saliva that could pierce shields and fire attacks. The heat was extreme. The hunters weren't stupid. They realized the longer the battle dragged on, the worse their situation became. But they were stuck. Couldn't advance. Couldn't retreat. The only option left was to hold out until they ended up as well-roasted meat. They were carrying the burden on their backs. But fortunately, just as they were running out of stamina, Shin Hyun and his chicken house team arrived to save the day. Being a massive fanboy, Kim Ji-hyun couldn't help but gush over his idol. Even though he was currently being carried like a sack of potatoes by Eon Soul to get away from the poison. Not wanting to disappoint his hero, he immediately teamed up with his two comrades to pull off a teleportation move, taking out several monsters at once. Shin Hyun found this guy pretty interesting. Shin Hyun took the liberty of asking what level he was. It's not often he gets asked, so Kim Ji-hyun scratched his head and answered sheepishly, I just barely hit level 40. And the others reached level 40 too. Eon Soul's face twisted in disbelief. They were even higher level than her. She couldn't believe it. After saying that, he turned to Shin Hyun, rubbing his chin, and asked with an expectant look, You saw that skill just a few times and already mastered it, right? As expected of guild leader Cha. Sometimes, Shin Hyun just wanted to punch the guy. Seeing that, Shin Hyun went with the flow, pretending to be cool, and raised his hand. The higher the expectation, the bigger the disappointment. I'll only demonstrate this once, so don't be too surprised. He spoke, but the guy standing nearby just froze, unable to believe he was that talented. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, nothing happened. There was no teleportation whatsoever. Kim Ji-hyun had to interrupt. Guild leader Cha, you haven't used teleportation yet, right? Just pretend you didn't see anything. There are still many truths in this world I don't know, so I'm usually that kind of person. Shin Hyun was embarrassed, but he didn't say a word. He slowly lowered his hand, muttered a mental mantra to stay calm, and then spoke with a very composed expression. Kim Ji-hyun, how exactly do you use teleportation? As requested, he excitedly showed off, his hands moving while his mouth wouldn't stop, to the point where the listener's ears started to ache. When I'm soloing, I usually attack the monsters by dropping them from high up. I use teleportation to gather them all together. I'm still limited to a maximum height of 150 centimeters. But for monsters without wings, falling from that height is enough to kill them. He kept bragging. Kim Ji-hyun continued to explain for a while longer before finally stopping. Not because he chose to stop, but because Shin Hyun had managed to pull off the move himself. That's the only reason he finally shut up. The only thing is, he hasn't quite mastered it yet, so he teleported his ass right onto a tree branch. He kept at it for a while, and before he knew it, it was lunchtime, even with those monkeys still hanging around. He tried to find an opening to attack, but the team was still holding up well. I mean, whatever, they couldn't deal with the hunger, so they grabbed a few bites to keep their luck up. Never seen someone stand before death like this before. Still acting as oblivious as a lunatic, Yunsel had to speak up and throw some shade. You seem pretty carefree, don't you? With a mountain of monkeys around us like this, I don't know how you can even swallow your food. Kim Ji-yoon didn't give a damn. She thanked them for their help and handed her a piece of kimbap to boost her energy. Yunsel was furious, spinning around in a huff, totally salty. Meanwhile, the big brother couldn't complain. He was chowing down on them, eating away with gusto. I even kept blabbering about how fast he was learning, ranting on about how to crank his awareness up to the max level, blah blah blah. Kim Ji-yoon was right there next to him, scribbling down every word her idol said, as if it would vanish from her memory the moment he stopped talking. Just looking at these two was making Unsel's eyes itch. She wanted to dive in and just smack the hell out of them. She took a sip of tea, put on a wise expression, and said to Kim Ji-hyun, "If you think you're going to learn anything by clinging to my brother, then you'd better wake up and smell the coffee. The methods that make him strong are things only he can use. So it's useless." Before she could even finish, he cut her off, throwing it right back in her face. "I know, but I'm the team leader. With my current level holding such a vital position, I just can't bring myself to be satisfied. Even when I feel the wall of what people call talent, I still ask myself if there's anything I can learn from Guildmaster Cha." Hearing this, Unsel suddenly remembered their last dungeon conquest. She seemed to have realized something, so she stopped being so snappy with him. She walked over, shoved a piece of kimbap into his mouth, and even admitted it tasted pretty good. Hearing her local food get complimented, Kim Ji-yoon's eyes lit up like high-beam headlights. She lunged forward, grabbed Unsel's hands, and insisted on gifting her an entire truckload of kimbap, totally ignoring the fact that those two guys were still brawling. Shin-hyun opened his system window to check things over. Looks like he found a way. Earlier, in the Bujon dungeon, he had collected the majestic skill stone. It had the power to crush monsters with sheer presence and control their minds. Out of curiosity, he combined it with his mind sword, the manifestation of his will. And to his surprise, he had completely dominated his targets with specific commands. Shin-hyun had used it a few times for fun, but since controlling monsters didn't really mean much, he'd completely forgotten about it. Now that he was in a tight spot, his memory kicked back in. Shin-hyun immediately combined it with his mind's eye, located every single monster, and ordered them to appear right in front of him instantly. With that done, he turned to the current team leader and asked, "Kim Ji-hyun, do you still have enough energy to perform a mass teleport?" Somehow, "I feel like I'm about to run into some trouble." Just hearing that was a bad sign. But Kim Ji-hyun had to reply, "I can." No sooner had Shin-hyun finished speaking than the monsters swarmed in like an earthquake. The whole team quickly sensed something was off, and when they looked into the void, it was nothing but monsters surrounding them. Shin-hyun signaled for Kim Ji-hyun to get the team out of there. "I was going to stay behind and take on this bunch himself." Unsel wasn't having it. But before she could even raise an objection, they were already teleported somewhere else. "Good. Now I can fight without holding back a bit, huh?" Shin-hyun said excitedly to those red-assed monkeys, even if he had no clue if they understood a word he was saying. Watching her brother try his best to protect everyone, Yunsel couldn't help but worry, biting her nails in suspense. Kim Ji-yoon, on the other hand, was jumping for joy, thrilled to see her idol, showing off his power. But looking at Shin-hyun's sister, he realized that no matter how strong the guy was, he was her only family. So he reached out to hold her hand and reassure her, "Guildmaster Cha is an incredibly strong man, so you don't need to worry so much. You know your brother better than anyone, right? So what's the harm in trusting Guildmaster Cha a little more?" Unsel looked at Kim Ji-hyun with a strange expression and shot back, "What the hell are you barking about? Right now my brother is hogging all that experience for himself like a total jerk. Why on earth would I be worried about him? The thing that gets people excited right now isn't that little commotion over there. I swear you just can't talk to these two siblings." At the same time, in Seoul, Lee Ji-hee instinctively froze for a second, having suddenly heard the laughter of some madman, and she didn't need to be told who that madman was. The assistant, who was in the middle of a status report, paused and asked if she was all right before continuing with his work. He gave her a brief rundown on the precarious situation the Wanjuan Guild was facing. Now that those contested dungeons have been easily claimed, they won't need to worry about the movements of the association for a while, but instead, a much more terrifying emergency has emerged. Her assistant hurriedly pulled out a stack of documents for Lee Ji-hee. As she looked through them, her face went pale, breaking into a cold sweat despite the 40-degree summer heat. This is a high-danger dungeon discovered at Mont Tybeck, danger level 13. Only hunters level 60 and above can withstand that desert climate. Li Jai-hee looked at them and gasped. That means a dungeon with a horrific difficulty level has spawned. Level 13 risk, requiring at least level 60 hunters. The Tybeck dungeon. Its terrain is a scorching desert. Giant bat monsters, roughly as tall as a 10-story building, buried under the sand. Even though there aren't many, each one is as strong as a high-level hunter. That was the intelligence personally delivered by Association President John Jun-ho. It made Li Jai-hee's skin crawl. She sighed in exhaustion, feeling that she, the president, and the director would probably have to organize a separate team to handle them. At times like this, Ji-hee quietly wished, if only Shin-hyun were here. Lost in thought, she accidentally knocked over her teacup. It shattered with a crash, tea spilling all over the floor. Have I gone crazy? But when will he actually be able to come back? Ji-hee winced, blaming herself. It had already been half a month since Shin-hyun and his group left for the Jeju dungeon. Shin-hyun had also grown accustomed to using the Mind-Spirit command, a combination of two skills, the Majestic Presence and Mind-Spirit Insight. While wandering around the Jeju dungeon, he had been luring monsters out. It looked like Shin-hyun was carrying the entire Jeju Island Alliance team alongside Unseon. Useon seemed quite battle-hungry and excited. Not only did they defeat monsters, but they also happened to beat up Kim Ji-eun and her group too. The hunter leveling process is based on experience points. XP is distributed based on contribution, depending on the damage each hunter deals to the monster. That means if I don't join the battles, it would actually be much more efficient. But Shin-hyun was lost in thought when the desperate cries of a warrior reached his ears. Someone running for their life, being chased closely by a monster. In moments like this, Shin-hyun had no choice but to intervene. The immense power of the displacement technique Shin-hyun unleashed made the monster panic, eyes bulging in shock. The knight was so scared he nearly peed his pants. Shin-hyun had to take on the responsibility of carrying other teams. How impressive is that? Kim Ji-hyun down below cheered, looking at Shin-hyun with admiring eyes. While wandering in the dungeon, Shin-hyun had learned the instant displacement skill from Kim Ji-hyun, and he had become so familiar with that skill that it was incredibly impressive, even if his mastery hadn't reached the standard yet. That evening, the whole group sat by the seaside watching the sunset. Sipping a few bottles of soju, they chatted away, feeling that this island was truly wonderful. Ucheon and Ji-eun had leveled up quite a bit during this dungeon trip. Our trip to Jeju Island was supposed to be like a family vacation, so I was a bit worried she would feel disappointed that we spent all our time training like this. Luckily, it seems she still looks very happy with this trip. I guess a dungeon tour trip is also a memorable memory, right? Shin-hyun thought happily. Ji-eun pulled out an announcement and read aloud, "The next dungeon raid is a request from the Sandado Guild. It's a level 11 risk. There's a species of monster known as the bat wolf. It has the face of a wolf and the body of a bat. Rumor has it they are very fast and have sharp teeth, capable of easily tearing through human flesh." Shin-hyun was a bit uneasy when hearing about the dungeon's terrain. It was a cave. Ji-eun read on, "They only asked Shin-hyun to accompany them because the cave is very dark. Visibility is very narrow, making Ucheon's name and Ji-hyun's instant displacement skill less useful." Ucheon felt quite uneasy, but Shin-hyun advised her, "Take this opportunity to rest for a bit, and I'll be back soon." Mentioning the cave made Shin-hyun remember things he didn't really want to recall. The next day, Kim Dong-ok, the president of the Sandapo Guild and also the guide for this raid, appeared, cheerfully greeting Shin-hyun. Without further ado, the two quickly entered the dungeon. Damn it, just thinking about caves had already made me more uncomfortable than I thought. But I can't quit this job, just because of my own personal feelings. No matter what, I have to get used to this as quickly as possible. No matter what's inside, I have to finish it quickly and get back. Shin-hyun stood in front of the cave entrance, clenching his fists, trying to reassure himself before stepping inside. Countless bat-wolf monsters were zapped by Shin-hyun in the blink of an eye, leaving the guild members sweating bullets because things were progressing faster than planned. I didn't even let them lead the way. Shin-hyun put on full speed, trying to finish the mission as quickly as possible to get out of there, because the terrifying memories of the past were now surfacing to haunt him. Shin Hyun's mind was in agony, and being annoyed by Dong-ok, Shin Hyun immediately lost his temper, making the guy terrified as hell. Must get out quickly! Otherwise, I might end up beating them all up. Shin Hyun clenched his fists, telling himself. The path ahead was a bit complicated, so Dong-ok would lead the way. His strange actions from earlier until now were very suspicious, but perhaps I'm just being sensitive. Shin Hyun thought briefly, then continued to follow Dong-ok. While listening to Dong-ok babble, Shin Hyun suddenly looked up at the ceiling in a panic. A chilling sensation swept through his body. A formation? Moreover, this energy signature came from the illusionary maze formation. While it doesn't kill people, once stuck in this formation, one will lose their sense of direction, going in circles with no way out. However, looking at the flow of vital energy, this formation is actually guiding to somewhere. Why is a formation I've seen in the martial world appearing in a dungeon? Is this the returning cycle technique from the martial world's secondary cultivation? A formation that already existed in this world? Shin Hyun, trembling and confused, felt his mind spiraling out of control. In this dire situation, the last thing he wanted was to face anything related to the Murim world in this dungeon. Shin Hyun steadied himself, repeating, "That's all in the past. Come on, you can do this. Pull yourself together." With his composure regained, he decided to take a gamble and go in to deal with the guy. Meanwhile, at the Silver Corpse Mountain in the desert dungeon, the defense team was hard at work fighting off monsters, and for a moment, it seemed like they had the upper hand. Suddenly, the beast launched a surprise attack, throwing everyone into chaos. Struggling to withstand the monster's onslaught, the team signaled for Jihye at the perfect moment. Coordinating their attack, Jihye delivered the finishing blow with her sword, and the monster was sent straight to the afterlife. They had only taken down 3, but the whole team was exhausted. Jihye quickly ordered the troops to find some shade and rest. When the vice-captain mentioned Shin Hyun, Jihye shyly gave him a sharp nudge in the chest. It nearly knocked him over. Chairman Nu Jung and Jun Sung-min couldn't join Jihye's group today because they had other duties to attend to. At that very moment, outside the desert dungeon near Silver Corpse Mountain, 2 icy-faced guards, clad in full armor, stood aggressively with their spears pointed toward the dungeon entrance, while 2 other dungeon guards were busy munching on snacks and gossiping non-stop. They thought guarding the gate was the easiest job in the world since there was nothing to do. But no sooner had the words left their mouths than a rain of explosions came crashing down, catching everyone, and obliterating them in the blink of an eye amidst the swirling smoke and debris. The chief secretary, covered in blood and groaning, scrambled to his feet. He realized this was a meteor strike, a high-level archery skill. The dungeon raid today was supposed to be top secret. Only a handful of people in the guild knew about it. How did things end up like this? Could it be the Sunset Guild? Just as he wondered, a figure approached from the distance. It was Director Jun Sung-min, wearing an innocent, naive look, acting as if he wanted to know what had happened. The chief secretary was relieved, telling him that someone from Sunset had ambushed them and that it would be a few more hours before the guild leader and vice leader finished their operation. The chief secretary hesitated, wondering if he should go inside to sound the alarm. But any hesitation was already too late. Seizing the moment, Jun Sung-min plunged his knife into the chief secretary's stomach without a hint of mercy. "I'm almost done with this," he muttered. "Don't worry, Chief Secretary." Jun Sung-min's eyes glinted as he spoke, his blade slick with fresh, vile blood. After finishing off the chief secretary, he pulled out his phone to report to his accomplices. Tae-hoon and his partner, those 2 cold-blooded wretches, laughed with glee that the plan had gone so smoothly. Tae-hoon was incredibly satisfied to see the chief secretary's body, which had been cleaned up by Jun Sung-min. "Jihye, you arrogant girl, you never suspected that the traitors were right there in your executive team, did you? I even bought them off," Tae-hoon bragged. "Before the Sun Festival even started, you had no idea, right?" Tae-hoon whistled, stepping right over the blood-soaked corpse at his feet. "I remember the day I was in the same dungeon as Jihye. That was when I had just returned from the Murim world and started as a hunter," Tae-hoon reminisced. Seeing Jihye spending all her time cleaning up after others instead of training had irritated him. He just wanted both of them to become as strong as possible, as quickly as possible. Tae-hoon had brought out the ancient stone he received from the heaven-seeking god of war, along with a message from him, wanting Jihye to wear it and serve under his command. That way, they could have become much stronger than they were, but to his shock, Jihye flatly refused, leaving Tae-hoon deeply disappointed. Jihye was content with her current life. She had no desire to be stronger than anyone else. Jihye's rejection hurt Taehoon deeply. He had thought she was the only one who could understand him, because they had both endured similar pain, but Taehoon realized he had been left behind. It was all because of those foolish people. And so, in a fit of blind rage, Taehoon lost control and wiped out everyone around Jihye. Park Taehoon, is it always going to be like this? The only reason you're looked down upon is because Lee Jihye is too weak. She's forgotten how miserable she was back in the Murim world, and all because of those insects. Destroy and erase everything that makes Lee Jihye soft. If you do that, Lee Jihye will finally understand you. Taehoon, fueled by his mad conviction, swore to set Jihye free, starting with everyone around her. Seeing Taehoon stop at the cave entrance in silence, Cheol-hyuk ordered the rest of the men. Protect this spot. If anyone tries to run out of the dungeon, wipe them all out. Don't leave a single one. How is the operation at Jeju Island going? Taehoon asked in a cold voice. Don't worry, the goblins are already on the move. You always knew that no one could escape the trap that guy set, didn't you? Although time is a bit tight, he reported that the tactical plan is pretty much ready to go. Cheol-hyuk replied. If they entered the dungeon, Cheol-hyuk wanted to be the one to deal with Jihye first, just as Taehoon had promised. A flash of malice flickered in Taehoon's eyes, but it quickly faded. He happily agreed. The time had come. Taehoon's 500 men quickly marched into the cave. Meanwhile, on Shinhyun's side, he was lost in a secluded spot with the dragon snail. Shinhyun suddenly spun around, aggressively marching toward the dragon snail, grabbing its snout and distorting it, glaring as he growled, "Let's talk clearly now. What exactly is your scheme here? Do you want to die here? Did you think I wouldn't notice that something was wrong from the very beginning? If you want to make it out of here in one piece, you'd better start talking." While still furious at the dragon snail, Shinhyun suddenly noticed something up ahead. It was a signal light from the bomb planted in the cave by Taehoon's group. Shinhyun smirked, finding it quite interesting. A second later, a deafening explosion ripped through the ground, and a massive fireball engulfed the area. Inside the cave, Jihye felt an ominous sensation but dismissed it, thinking she was just being too sensitive. As she was still wondering if they could capture all the monsters today, another shockwave hit, making Jihye turn around in a panic. The site of the massive explosion was exactly where her party was resting. Amidst the raging inferno, the captain and his team are struggling to hold their ground against Cheol-hyuk and his army. Despite giving it their all, the enemy's sword strikes are just too damn fast. Cheol-hyuk's attacks are so lethal the captain can't block them at all. He's covered in blood and his body is a wreck. Damn it, this is a disaster. Just dealing with a guy like Cheol-hyuk is enough to make me suffocate. And they actually dared to say, Choi Ji-hyung came from Ji-hyung-gun. Besides, how the hell are we supposed to deal with that monster? The captain stares in desperate fear as Taehoon stands right in front of him, glancing over with a mocking challenge. So you are a captain after all? I honestly thought you were just a puppet leader. Who would have guessed? You've actually got some backbone. I've underestimated you. Taehoon claps mockingly, my bad, which sends the captain into a blind rage. He grinds his teeth, desperate to know how Taehoon even got in here. Weren't there guards outside the dungeon entrance? Those guys? You still haven't figured it out yet? We're at this point, and you still haven't guessed it? Taehoon stares him down with a taunting gaze, and the captain can't hold back his fury anymore. The dungeon's location was only discovered recently. Besides, this raid was supposed to be top secret. It seems there's a spy in our ranks. The Twilight Guild, you bastards, and those traitors, I'll crush every last one of you, the captain roars in defiance. But before the captain can even make a move, Taehoon's men have already wiped out everyone around Jihye. The scene is filled with people weeping and begging for their lives. With fresh blood dripping all around, Taehoon grins, absolutely delighted by this tragic farewell. Jihye lunges from behind, swinging her sword at Taehoon with everything she's got, but Cheol-hyuk blocks her. Taehoon locks eyes with Jihye and flashes a mocking smile, saying he's really missed her. Jihye can't stand his filthy words and immediately swings her sword at him again. On command, Seung-hyuk jumps in to intercept Jihye for Taehoon. The two of them trade brutal blows, neither giving an inch. Seung-hyuk is fighting with everything he has, nearly killing Jihye a few times, but she's no pushover either. Every strike is just insane. Seeing Seung-hyuk getting heated, Jihye decides to provoke him. You've really improved since you started clinging to Park Taehoon, haven't you? Back when you were a rookie, you couldn't even hold a knife properly. Insulted, Sung-hyuk flies into a tantrum. His attacks become even more vicious, forcing Ji-hye to break a cold sweat as she glances toward the surrounded captain. Ji-hye realizes that if she goes all out, the captain might hold on for a little longer. But the real problem is the bastard Taehoon, just sitting there, chilling. Ji-hye knows there's no way he's just going to sit there. So, Lee Ji-hye is stronger than I thought. The situation on Jeju Island must be wrapped up by now. If things went according to plan, Shin-hyun should just be a corpse by now. Taehoon thinks smugly, completely unaware that Shin-hyun is still alive and kicking, and absolutely furious. When words fail, violence speaks. Shin-hyun is seething, swearing to show them what hell really looks like. I've had enough of your bullshit. Taehoon has successfully poked the bear. The Jongok crew crawls up from the rocks, clutching their heads in pain, but what shocks them most is seeing Shin-hyun standing there, alive and without a single scratch. Shin-hyun is beyond livid. This makes no sense. You told me it was an emergency and made me waste my internal energy in the dungeon, all for a stupid bomb? Let's finish this right now. Tell me, what the hell is this all about? This isn't a joke. Shin-hyun is intense. He uses every ounce of his strength to grab Jong-ok by the throat, making his eyes roll back as he screams that he knows nothing. Shin-hyun's rage only boils over further. Bullshit! Ensuring no outsiders can enter the dungeon is the responsibility of the guild that owns it. Besides, it would take days to rig a trap like that and plant bombs that deep inside. And you expect me to believe you didn't know anything? Do you really think I'm that stupid? Shin-hyun says this with a spine-chilling grin that makes them absolutely terrified. Jong-ok keeps sobbing and pleading, insisting they really don't know anything. It's the truth, we almost died too. You almost died for nothing, just because of you. If they won't drink the wine of peace, they'll have to drink the wine of force. Shin-hyun doesn't hesitate to use extreme measures on Jong-ok. Shin-hyun growls, activating his absolute command to invade Jong-ok's mind. Our Sandado Guild is a sub-guild receiving financial support from the Twilight Guild. From the start, our main mission was to ensure the opinions within the Jeju Island Alliance aligned with the Twilight Guild. But one day, he came to find us. Galen, the Chinese hunter. Even though I don't know who he is or what he has to do with the Twilight Guild, he probably wanted to act like a big shot. We just followed the Twilight Guild's orders. Galen, he left it to us. Our mission was to bring you to the agreed location at the scheduled time. Galen was supposed to clean up this battlefield. Under Shin-hyun's mental influence, Jong-ok spills everything. There's no communication signal between inside the dungeon and the outside world, which means that son of a bitch. Galen must have entered the dungeon too, but I don't feel a thing. Has he escaped already? Shin-hyun suddenly had an idea. He immediately unleashed a massive blast of magic straight at the mountain-high pile of rocks in front of him. His raw power cleared the cave, turning the blocked entrance into a tunnel leading outside. The dragon snail's minions were overjoyed, thinking they had been saved. Little did they know, their joy was short-lived, because before leaving, Shin-hyun turned around and sealed the cave entrance back up just like before. He ignored their desperate screams and pleas for help, simply walking away and leaving them to their fate. I guess this is just the work of the sunset, right? Thanks for giving me a reason to publicly wipe you all out. Should I start by meeting our friend Galen? Shin-hyun smirked, calculating his next move. Meanwhile, Ji-hye was struggling in a fierce fight with Seong-hyuk. She kept provoking her opponent until Seong-hyuk completely lost his cool and lunged at her. Ji-hye decided to show him what a real festival was like by using her technique, her super invincible blood moon slash. The two chased each other like crazy. Bet you can't catch me! Seong-hyuk fired a blast of force that pushed Ji-hye back, but she certainly wasn't one to be underestimated. Too fast, too dangerous. As she swung her blade back, he used his original skill to counter. What the hell is this? Seong-hyuk's skill melted Ji-hye's blade in the blink of an eye. If she slipped up here, it would likely result in a severe wound, or she might even meet her ancestors right then and there. Things were starting to get interesting. Your fighting style has changed a lot, huh? I seem to remember you mimicking me using dual blades, Ji-hye smirked at Seong-hyuk. It's all thanks to you, Ji-hye. Wasn't it you who told me this? The way for an assassin to become stronger? Seong-hyuk replied. Ji-hye broke into a cold sweat. She didn't remember ever telling him that. His poison techniques were truly annoying. But his clones were also a problem. Where was his real body? Ji-hye thought anxiously. Seong-hyuk kept egging her on to use the shadow dance, but she really didn't want to. She couldn't use the shadow dance right now, because she needed to conserve her strength to negotiate with Park Tae-ho. Seung-hyuk couldn't hold back anymore. He gritted his teeth and thrust his blade straight into Ji-hye's heart, drawing blood. In the past, Seung-hyuk had been humiliated by Ji-hye, even threatened with a blade, but in the end, she gave him and Taehoon a chance to live, along with advice to find a new path if possible. It was like you were mocking me and completely denying my existence. After that, I threw away all your techniques and started everything from scratch. That's how I was able to surpass you. Even though you came from a rival guild, I still admired and respected you. Can you even imagine how disgusting that is? To receive pity and contempt from someone like that. Yes, you're absolutely right. It was precisely because of my obsession with dealing with you that I became the best assassin. Seung-hyuk laughed triumphantly, raising his blade to finish her off. Ji-hye was coughing up blood on the ground at that moment. But no. Suddenly, a surge of magic erupted from behind Seung-hyuk. Ji-hye was standing behind him, having appeared out of nowhere, laughing triumphantly and mocking him. It turned out she had used a shadow clone. Catching Seung-hyuk off guard, she said, "I'll teach you one more thing. An assassin only reveals their true self once. That is the moment they are able to skewers their enemy." Ji-hye laughed loudly, then unleashed a flurry of force onto Seung-hyuk, making him squeal like a stuck pig until he took his last breath. "You were just a knockoff version of me. You ignorant bastard." Ji-hye turned her back. With Seung-hyuk dealt with, it was Taehoon's turn next. This was the guy Ji-hye wanted to stab the most. The two taunted each other for a moment before charging in. Ji-hye's shadow dance was ready for the kill. Shin-hyun tried calling Ji-hye, but her number was unavailable. After he left the cave, Galen's henchmen were already waiting to swarm him. "Looks like you're trying to contact Ji-hye. She won't be able to answer. She's in the middle of a dungeon raid. The signal of electronic devices doesn't work between the inside and outside of a dungeon. How was the cave? It should be a familiar place to us. The ones who have been to Murim, shouldn't it?" Shin-hye Galen appeared and said, "Looks like you're the one who caused that." "You must be from Murim, but how do you know Ji-hye is in a dungeon raid right now?" Shin-hye wondered. Seeing Galen hesitate to speak, Shin-hye immediately unleashed the resonance of the heaven martial origin, making Galen sweat bullets. He immediately snapped his fingers, creating a top-tier trap system, combining traps learned in Murim with sorcery techniques. Shin-hyun swung his fist, creating the heaven seal system. But unexpectedly, he felt his body becoming heavy and realized he couldn't use his internal energy. Shin-hyun started to worry, trying his best to counterattack. Deep down, he was terrified, wondering if all of them were returnees from the martial arts world. "Shin-hyun, it's great to see that shocked look on your face. How does it feel? When your internal energy is being drained from your body? My golden heaven seal is absorbing the internal energy you possess, and that energy will be transferred to my disciples. The ones who learned martial arts as if they had always possessed it. It doesn't matter how strong you are. You still can't beat us. Actually, the stronger you are, the less chance you have of winning. The power you are storing will be the very thing that destroys you." Galen laughed triumphantly. Shin-hyun was shaking, but he refused to give up. His whole body kept moving against their attacks. The Heaven Seal Trap is a type of spatial dimension created by placing things like natural objects, or mystical items like talismans in a specific way. The legendary strategist and master of the Heaven Seal Trap, Zhuge Liang, used the Heaven Seal Trap to summon. With the wind and light, he used to wipe out countless enemies. He truly rivaled the omniscience and omnipotence of a god. Garland had admired him ever since he was very young. Did he only get trained in Heaven's Seal Traps back in the Murim world, or when he returned to the real world? If Gowlin is inside a Heaven's Seal Trap, he could become a god. I see now. I think I finally understand it now. Metal energy. So this is the foundation of the Metal Heaven Seal, Shin-hyun said, launching an attack that sent the Lola bunch flying instantly. I've never heard of or seen martial arts like this before. When did he strike their pressure points? Points? This is impossible. How on earth did he manage to move so quickly and freely within his own Heaven's Seal Trap? Gowlin thought, panicked. Oh my god, you bastards, I just wanted to ask you a few things from the start. I really just wanted to ask you some questions. Are you guys from the demonic cult? I guess you don't know anything at all, do you? I can understand why. Because while you were learning martial arts, you weren't actually people who returned from the Murim world. Your swordsmanship is too pathetic for anyone who has been in the Murim world. Furthermore, I can't sense any heavenly martial origin energy in you. That is the main reason for my conclusion, Shin-hyun declared, making everyone's face turn pale. You're truly sharp, Shin-hyun. You're right. My disciples are different from me. They were trained to become warriors, Gaolin boasted. Become warriors? Only someone at my level can reach another person's meridians and transmit internal energy. That is impossible for people of your caliber. You must be using some kind of sorcery. Am I right? Otherwise, there is no way you could achieve something like this. Anyway, whatever it is, you've already used it. But it won't make much of a difference. Is that magic or sorcery used by the demonic cult? Shin-hyun asked mockingly. Gaolin praised Shin-hyun's extensive knowledge. That's right. I used people wandering the streets. Even though they live such worthless lives, they are actually very valuable. I've gained quite a lot. With just a few thousand lives, I was able to acquire rare disciples with high-level predatory instincts. This doesn't change the fact that no matter how many types of mystical magic you use, you won't be able to get out of my heaven seal trap. So I guess that means you use human lives, huh? Huh. This is why I like demonic cult followers, because when I negotiate with them, it doesn't matter if I destroy or torture them. I not only feel no guilt, but I actually feel great. So then, shall we begin the hunt for the demonic cult? Shin-hyun seemed to go berserk, launching a powerful resonance strike that left Gaolin dizzy. He aggressively chanted a demonic spell to force the bodies of the Lola group to become energized again. How pathetic to feel proud. Just because you stole someone else's internal energy, Shin-hyun said, stomping his foot hard on the ground. A surge of energy erupted, making their bodies feel as if they were on fire. As they screamed in agony under Gaolin's bewildered gaze, Shin-hyun explained, "Fire destroys metal. Fire melts metal. That is the most basic, simple thing that one needs to understand about the resonance of the 5 elements. Because your heaven seal trap is based on metal energy, I did a few things to it. I studied the heaven seal traps a little while I was still in the Murim world. It was just a hobby. It really is a bit interesting, isn't it?" Hearing Shin-hyun say that, Gaolin was shocked to his core. The thing he spent his whole life researching and practicing was, to Shin-hyun, just a hobby. You look pretty shocked after realizing how mediocre you actually are. You don't necessarily have to be so miserable. After all, it's something smart people usually do well, like studying. How does your body feel now? This heaven seal trap of mine is burning up your innate energy. It's going to end you soon. Since you took the lives of others, you can't complain about having your own things stolen, right? Shin-hyun smirked at Gaolin and activated a forced command to extract all his information to see what happened to Lee Ji-hye. Lee Ji-hye is already dead, Gaolin stammered. In her days, Ji-hye remembered the good memories between her and Tae-hun in the past, as well as his weakness back then. We probably shouldn't have met. Ji-hye suddenly glared, thinking. Tae-hun stood in front of her and motioned for her to wake up. His cocky expression made Ji-hye's blood boil. She cursed a few times, then aggressively drew her knife and lunged at Tae-hun. Tae-hun bared his teeth and immediately used his reaction shield to block her. Ji-hye was sent flying 10 meters away. Her shadow dance technique was also neutralized. Is he really that strong? It seems I can't trick him this time, Ji-hye growled, thinking. She took a deep breath and dared to ask Tae-hun, I want to ask you one last question. Why did you kill them? You always avoid answering that question. So I must hear your answer now. Ji-hye lost her composure, her hands shaking and clenched into fists. It's just because they were too weak. Isn't it human nature to trample on the weak? Tae-hun shot back with such a provocative remark that it made Ji-hye's blood boil. I must have lost my mind. Just for thinking I could reason with you. That's enough. Let's end this. I'm going to tear you apart. Ji-hye, furious to the point of sobbing and laughing manically, swung her blade and charged straight at Tae-hun. The two sources of power clashed once again, making the earth and sky tremble as shockwaves blasted outward, echoing incessantly toward Shin-hyun, who was sitting by the shore. The leader of the Heavenly War Guild had kicked the bucket so quickly that he couldn't get any intel other than their location, 450 kilometers away. Shin-hyun's expression darkened. He calculated that with his current abilities, he could reach them in 20 minutes. Lee Ji-hye was just a business partner. He had no obligation to save her from danger. In the world of martial arts, settling personal scores is standard practice. There was no need for him to get involved. Shin-hyun tried to calm himself and turned to walk away. But memories of Ji-hye suddenly flooded his mind, causing him to burst into a manic, hysterical laugh. So much for not caring, huh? I think I've lost it. I actually thought the only things I cared about were Yusion and myself. I didn't realize there was someone else. Shin Hyun muttered, then bolted like a rocket toward Jihye. At Mount Tiamat, the Sungbin gang was relaxing and gloating while guarding the dungeon entrance. They were laughing and chatting, convinced that Shin Hyun was already dead and buried. Even if he were alive, there's no way he could make it here all the way from Jeju Island. But right at that moment, from behind the bushes, a sudden commotion sent birds scattering into the sky. The atmosphere turned eerily quiet, making the hair on the back of their necks stand up. The silence was deafening, and they were shaking in their boots. Shin Hyun appeared with overwhelming force. With a single sweep of his hand, he sent the Sungbin gang to meet their ancestors in a heartbeat, accompanied by their deafening screams. Meanwhile, inside, things between Jihye and Taehoon were getting just as heated. The two were trading blow for blow. Taehoon grew more intense with every strike, his power so immense that Jihye began to tremble. During a moment of vulnerability, Jihye's dagger was shattered. Taehoon seized the chance, grabbed Jihye's head, and slammed it into the sandy floor until she bled. Seeing her shaking and weak like that made Taehoon incredibly thrilled. Following the heavenly sky war god is the only truth. It's not too late. I'm giving you a chance to join us. Come join me. We will become so strong that no one can threaten or ignore us ever again. As he frantically choked her and kept spouting his twisted dogma, Jihye, showing her grit, she spat that she'd rather die than follow him. What? Who's stronger? Who's right? Seriously, do you really think I'm a child? Remember this well. You'll just end up as nothing more than a stray dog serving that heavenly sky war god of yours. Shin Hyun is hunting down that war god. His sole purpose is to avenge the life that was ruined. Do you really think he's going to let a lackey like you survive? Jihye glared and said, Heh, Shin Hyun, you say? Listen closely, Jihye. By now, Shin Hyun is probably just a corpse. I already sent assassins to take him out. They are elite followers of the heavenly sky war god, the spearhead of the Heavenly War Guild, led by someone who returned from the martial arts world, sent to Jeju Island to carry out the assassination. Each of them is far stronger than most high-ranking hunters. Even if Shin Hyun has improved, he has zero chance of surviving against the Heavenly War Guild. Taehoon kept running his mouth, completely oblivious to the fact that Shin Hyun had been standing behind him, listening to him bark this whole time. Hearing Shin Hyun's voice, he froze, panic washing over his face. He couldn't believe it. Shin Hyun was standing there, tossing the corpses of the Dawn Guild members at Taehoon's feet as a warning. Jihye was overjoyed to see him. Shin Hyun looked at Jihye, covered in wounds, and his face went cold. A surge of rage flared up, and he immediately unleashed his full power, aiming straight for Taehoon, swearing to make this day his funeral. Shin Hyun and Taehoon collided from opposite sides. Overflowing with such raw hostility, they looked ready to tear each other to shreds. Their combined power exploded with a roar that shook the heavens, sweeping through the area with smoke and fire, as if the very space itself were about to burst. Taehoon unleashed a barrage of fire from his sword. Shin Hyun had to return the favor with a martial arts display. It's only polite, after all. Since he said he'd do it, Shin Hyun immediately thrust his palm forward. A strike containing the power of the 18 dragon-subduing palms, crackling with lightning, made Taehoon visibly flinch. Isn't he the only one who knows that move? The beggar sect leader? How does he know it? Taehoon thought in a panic, guessing that Shin Hyun must have swiped the technique from somewhere. Taehoon quickly raised his sword to counterattack, his aura exploding with murderous intent, swearing to take Shin Hyun down. As his strike hit the ground, the sky turned a blood red from the sparks and smoke. Jihye blearily opened her eyes and looked around, but couldn't see Shin Hyun or Taehoon anywhere. Just then, the president's voice reached Jihye's ears. Upon realizing she was still alive, he was overjoyed. Jihye rushed over to support the president and immediately asked about the status of the others. They're all dead. We fought to the death, and I'm the only one who made it, the president, Junjun, replied to Taehoon. After that last attack by Shin Hyun, both his meridians and his internal energy were completely shattered. Two of his subordinates came rushing over from a distance, reporting that the entire area had been destroyed. Shin Hyun suddenly reappeared, making Taehoon jump in shock. What a monster! Doesn't he ever get tired? Damn it, my internal energy hasn't fully recovered yet. I have to buy some time, Taehoon thought to himself, immediately ordering Ju Sung-jeon and the Ji-hung team to attack Shin Hyun. His urgent and fierce demeanor scared the two subordinates half to death. Okay, we're doing it. Why are you so intense? Following orders, they channeled their power and lunged at Shin Hyun to give Taehoon time to recover. But before anything could happen, A terrifying sight unfolded before Taehoon's eyes. Jihye and the team leader were flying around, desperately searching for any sign of Shin Hyun, when Jihye suddenly slammed on the brakes. In front of her, Shin Hyun stood triumphantly over two bloodied corpses. Shin Hyun had taken them down in an instant. Next, it would be Taehoon's turn. Taehoon was terrified. He was still not fully recovered, and even if he were, he couldn't beat Shin Hyun anyway. "Don't back down! You can still fight! You're strong enough! You haven't given it your all yet! Keep struggling! Unleash your true power!" A demonic voice inside Taehoon suddenly echoed, goading him on. Instantly, a surge of evil power flooded through Taehoon, making him feel incredibly energized, refreshed, and confident. Maybe I can actually beat Shin Hyun. Oh, is that so, then, Shin Hyun? I'll have to let him struggle a little longer to make it satisfying. Deep in the shadows, a mysterious long-haired figure was secretly channeling power to help Taehoon take down Shin Hyun. It seems Taehoon is just a tool for someone else. As for the target, Shin Hyun, right now, the killing intent, pouring out from Taehoon, began to surge like a storm, prompting a compliment from Shin Hyun. "It seems you weren't hiding your skills. This power is something flowing naturally from that ring around your neck." Seeing Taehoon excitedly unleashing his power, Mada Shin Hyun smirk. "Since it's borrowed power, I can use it however I please. Be grateful. Be grateful that I, the first Sword Emperor, have drawn my blade. This is a special occasion." Shin Hyun let out a hearty laugh. As he drew his sword of energy, Taehoon's raw skill exploded. Acting like a madman, he went head-to-head against Shin Hyun's blade. After watching Taehoon miss an attack, Shin Hyun grinned viciously, channeled all his strength, and struck back, putting a massive hole straight through Taehoon's sword. "Look at that. It's your own fault for not holding it tight enough. To think a guy like you would drop his weapon. You really aren't a proper martial artist. Looks like the energy helping you has faded away too. Is this really all you've got?" Shin Hyun remained cold and composed. He then cleanly slashed across Taehoon's face, making him spit out a bucket of blood. Grabbing Taehoon by the throat, Shin Hyun spoke, "I have a lot of questions for you, especially those regarding the heavenly spear war god. Because of those questions, you're still keeping your pathetic life. You should be happy. Otherwise, you would have died the moment you hurt Urson. Now, can I get some answers from you? Who exactly is this heavenly spear war god you're following?" While pinning Taehoon down, Shin Hyun used a magic spell of absolute command, staring straight into his eyes. Under the influence of the magic, Taehoon blurted out the truth. "The heavenly spear. War God is the one who brought us all to this martial world, and at the same time, he is the one currently inhabiting our bodies." As soon as Taehoon revealed this truth, countless iron chains from within the system coiled out, wrapping around Shin Hyun's entire body. When he opened his eyes, Shin Hyun panicked, realizing he was tied up in a cave in the martial world. Shin Hyun screamed in fear at being dragged back to this place. "Doesn't this place look familiar to you? This is the world of your thoughts. Created by my mind sword. What do you think? Does it bring back memories of the past? You're the first person to ever come here. It's a pleasure to meet you, Shin Hyun. This is our first time meeting face to face, isn't it?" A strange voice echoed from within Taehoon's body, causing Shin Hyun to thrash in a fury, desperate to escape. He realized immediately that it wasn't Taehoon. "You're not Park Taehoon, are you? Seeing how easily you use the mind sword, you must be the heavenly spear war god, right?" Shin Hyun asked. "It seems you have many questions. It's rare for us to have an opportunity like this. So whatever you want to know, just ask." "I will answer you with all my heart," the heavenly spear war god replied arrogantly. "Not happy? I have been trapped in a terrifying world where I didn't even know when I would be able to die. I was all alone there for 145 years, without knowing if my family was alive or dead. I'm sure you witnessed all of it, the 145 years I suffered. And yet you call that pleasure?" That bastard Shin Hyun was screaming until he was on the verge of tears. But he got such a baffling answer from the Sky Heaven battle god. "I feel so exhausted. I'm just so drained by all of this. It feels like I'm slowly dying inside, yet I've waited so patiently just to see you reach a certain level. But what on earth has happened to you? You're still human, right? Perhaps it's because you're still clinging to this world, unable to let go?" Shin Hyun burst into laughter, feeling like the other guy was just spewing nonsense. "Still clinging to this world? Of course I am. I only want one thing. The person who made my life a living hell. Sky Heaven Battle God, I am definitely going to finish you off," Shin Hyun roared. He snapped his chains and threw a punch straight into the Sky Heaven Battle God's gut, making him vomit blood. Shin Hyun swore he would take out everyone connected to him. He landed a punch that left Taehoon's body a total mess, but the Sky Heaven Battle God had vanished into thin air. Remember what I said. Open the door on that path and run away. Otherwise, you're going to lose everything. His voice still echoed in the void. Shin Hyun was panting heavily, standing before Taehoon's bloodied corpse. Ji-hee and the team leader arrived from a distance. They saw the scene before them, having absolutely no clue what had just happened. The day after news of Park Taehoon's death broke, most of the stubborn ones in the Hunter Association and the Dawn Guild had been wiped out, and the survivors decided to keep their mouths shut. The thing that accelerated the merger between Dawn and Twilight was Oh Rong Hwan. After being attacked at the Dawn office, he had faked his death. Afterward, he managed to heal his wounds. Just like that, the merger issues between the two guilds were resolved. Shin-hee went to Ji-hee's office in Gwangju. Since early morning, she hadn't missed a single detail. The chaotic scene right before the press conference held there. From the outside, it seemed the takeover and merger plans for both guilds were finally settled. This is an official announcement, but we're still facing some difficulties, Ji-hee said sadly. She still couldn't imagine it. A Park Taehoon who struggled so hard through life could just leave like that. The Heavenly Kingdom. If I had tried to open the door to that mountain, I was far too agitated back then. I could have lost everything if I didn't end it the way I did. You're nothing but a spineless rat. How dare you even try to threaten me? Next time I won't let them off, Shin Hyun muttered while slurping his tea in annoyance. After waking Shin Hyun up, Ji-hee showed him something. A secret safe in the Guildmaster's room. It was magically sealed, so it couldn't be opened, and it couldn't be broken. It's not like I want to mess with other people's stuff, but if you lose something that valuable, you have to take responsibility for it, Shin Hyun said, waving his hand. In a flash, he made the safe pop open. How impressive. But the only thing inside the safe was a single piece of paper. Ji-hee immediately snatched it up, reading and guessing. Perhaps this was a secret agreement between the Chonjo Guild and Taehoon. They were collaborating with Twilight and intended to give sovereignty of the North Korean dungeon to Chonjo. Just then, team leader Ki Hyun called Shin Hyun to let him know that those who attacked him in the deep dungeon had been caught. Inside the airtight dungeon, it was chaotic, and then a bomb went off. That's insane. Shin Hyun was irritably cursing, making Ki Hyun break out in a cold sweat. Please, Shin Hyun, get over there quickly. Shin Hyun hung up the phone, sighing with exhaustion at these meddlesome people. Ji-hee continued, saying that on this paper, there were some things written about the Chonjo Guild. Besides Gowlin, whom Shin Hyun had already faced, there were 4 others who had returned from the martial arts world, along with some personal information. Specifically, these players were at least level 50. So you mean to say these guys are all fanatics who deserve to be skewered? Shin Hyun asked, shifting into high alert mode. He smirked, feeling like his next target had already been confirmed. Shin Hyun was determined to bring down the Chonjo Guild at any cost. Meanwhile, over at the E-Doctor's side, they were still hunting for information on Gowlin. It had been 39 hours since they lost contact with him. Taehoon's secret being exposed was one thing, but the fact that Gowlin had disappeared was absolutely shocking news to me. All 10 commanders who had approached the Supreme Master had lost contact. Just as Taehoon said, they were likely dead. I guess Shin Hyun's level must be over 75, meaning he's stronger than me, and I've only just reached level 68. This is interesting. Investigate Shin Hyun further, but avoid direct contact. Instead, proceed step by step very clearly. It doesn't matter if they have a higher level than me or not. The truth is, winning or losing isn't just based on level, E-Doctor bragged arrogantly, ordering his subordinates at the Hana Guild headquarters in Gwangju-ri. Cheon-seon was furiously grabbing Shin Hyun's hair, grinding her teeth and cursing him for disappearing without taking her along. Seeing Shin Hyun endure being bullied by his little sister like this was a rare sight. It made everyone laugh. I knew it would be like this. It's good to be back on Jeju Island. The public is buzzing about the merger of the Dawn and Twilight guilds, and Lee Ji-hee will be in charge of keeping an eye on the Heaven's Creation Guild. It'd be dangerous to get sloppy and let them slip away, so we need to gather intel carefully. Thank goodness she's handling that for me. Still, there are some annoying things I just don't know where to start with to take them down. Shin Hyun scratched his head, thinking, as Ki Hyun's grandfather approached him. Shin Hyun hung his head low, apologizing for the traitor hidden within the Jeju Guild alliance. The grandfather sincerely apologized for putting Shin Hyun in danger. Though honestly, I'm wondering whether the entire Jeju Guild Alliance has betrayed us or not. To be honest, I still can't completely shake my suspicions. However, there's no reason for you to turn me into your enemy, so let's just put all that behind us. As soon as Shin-hyun finished, he and Ki-hyun's grandfather hugged each other, overjoyed. But the joy was short-lived as Shin-hyun suddenly proposed a condition. The Jeju Guild should join us. The mention of merging with Dawn left everyone frozen for a few seconds. Didn't you say just the other day that you didn't want to get dragged into the war between Twilight and Dawn? That battle has already been decided, and I've already talked to Dawn about this. Besides, isn't it impossible to manage all the dungeons on Jeju Island with just that amount of manpower? Ki-hyun's grandfather hesitated for a moment before quickly agreeing, since there was no better offer than this. If I have Jeju Island under my wing, it'll be easier to find the Heaven's Creation Guild, even if there are still traitors left, Shin-hyun calculated silently. Ki-hyun mentioned there was still a rather dangerous dungeon near Halasan that needed Shin-hyun's attention. Hearing that, Shin-hyun stood up immediately to go deal with it right now, because from now on, he's going to be very busy. The current dungeon raid team only has a warrior, a tanker, and a priest. What an unusual combination. Ki-hyun and the archer, Useon, were left out of the team again, leaving both of them crying in sadness. To take on this dungeon, long-range attacks based on sight are useless. The Halasan dungeon is considered the hardest to conquer on Jeju Island. The biggest problem in this dungeon is the fog. The whole dungeon is covered in thick fog, making it very hard to know the positions of teammates even when they are standing close by. And the most dangerous thing? A monster called a bone leopard. With bodies that blend into the fog, it's hard to hit them with normal physical attacks. They can only be damaged by area of effect attacks, like the attribute skills of a priest. They also possess terrifying attack capabilities, like assassins. They appear suddenly and launch surprise attacks. After that long explanation, Shin-hyun felt annoyed, thinking he could just wipe them out in one hit. Under the worried gazes of his teammates, Shin-hyun confidently stepped into the dungeon, promising to defeat as many as he could. As soon as they stepped into the thick fog, it blanketed everything from Shin-hyun's sight. Team leader Kim Hagen quickly used a skill to light the way and keep everyone from getting lost. Shin-hyun asked if it was true that the area near the dungeon lobby was a perfectly safe zone. Yes, of course it is. There has never been a report of monsters appearing in the dungeon entrance area, Hagen replied. As soon as he finished, a sudden gust of wind blew through, scattering everyone in the group. Are we safe yet? The bald kid in the group was terrified, looking around, feeling as if something was waiting to attack him. At the very moment, the monster lunged at him from behind. Shin-hyun arrived in time to deflect it. Shin-hyun's critical strike sent the monster to the afterlife in an instant. Just as he predicted, when they attack, their bodies become visible. Turning around, Shin-hyun saw many bone monsters coming out of the dungeon gate, currently relentlessly attacking his teammates. Shin-hyun quickly snapped his fingers and burned the entire pack of monsters to ash. Next, he quickly signaled everyone to gather in one spot while no new monsters appeared for a short while. I can barely understand the situation, and I'm stunned too. If Mr. Shin-hyun wasn't here, my carelessness would have cost everyone in the guild their lives, Team Leader Hagen thought, dazed. Shin-hyun walked over softly, suggesting he wanted to talk to Hagen for a moment. Have you guys ever been attacked at the dungeon gate before? Shin-hyun asked curiously. No, this is the first time. It has never happened before. Perhaps it's because we don't clear the dungeon regularly. As a result, their numbers increased, and they were forced to come here, Hagen replied. Shin-hyun listened, stunned for a few seconds, feeling like he was about to find out what was going on here. As they delved deeper, over the next 3 hours, Shin-hyun continued to attack the monsters, leaving the group stunned by his infinite energy. Is there anything different from before? The frequency of attacks, the rank of the monsters, or anything else? Shin-hyun turned and asked. About that. They are appearing more frequently than before. Besides that, everything is the same, the girl in the group replied. Shin-hyun then mentioned he had discovered a suspicious area about 4 to 5 kilometers away. I wanted to go there to check what was happening. If this dungeon was as Shin-hyun thought, everyone would have to raise its danger level a bit more. They walked, and an hour later the fog was still covering everything in front of Shin-hyun's group. He smiled slightly and told Hagen to throw the dagger at that white barrier. Hagen put all his might into throwing the dagger. The tip pierced through the fog and struck something. A stiff, bone-chilling cry echoed out, leaving everyone panicked and terrified, clueless as to what it was. Only Shin Hyun wore a smile, because everything was happening exactly as he had predicted. It had arrived, a massive, colossal skeletal beast. It roared, tearing through the mist and lunging straight at the group. Under the guild leader's command, the team worked in perfect unison, unleashing a barrage of attacks on the monster. They kept it from even lifting its head. Shin Hyun was extremely satisfied with this display of teamwork. He left them to deal with the monster while he walked straight inside to see if there was anything else. I had my suspicions about this a while ago. This dungeon still has another giant, and more than one type of monster. This is the second time since the Bujon dungeon. If that's the case, is this the gate that summons these colossal creatures? Shin Hyun pondered. A monster hiding in the mist lunged from behind to bite him, but as if, buddy. I blocked it with ease, simple as a piece of cake. He knocked it out right on the spot. I'd heard that no more than 2 types of monsters could appear in a single dungeon. If Lee Ji-hee found out about this, she'd probably be shocked. Shin Hyun continued walking, lost in thought. There was a crack in the air that made him tremble. He couldn't touch it. It was just like a hologram. Shin Hyun's face darkened as he pulled up his status window, wanting to investigate what this unidentified phenomenon that pierced through all matter could be. He reached a hand through the crack. Hagen came running from afar, excitedly announcing to Shin Hyun that there were no more monsters left. Seeing that only he could see the crack, Shin Hyun smirked. His cold, icy gaze seemed to imply that the god of war in the sky was behind all of this. Jae-hee sat in her office until late, wearily processing the pile of documents that the secretary kept bringing in. The documents this time were related to an incident in a dungeon. People had died while exploring a new dungeon. That expedition team consisted only of amateur hunters. They died before they could even do anything. Ji-hee read through it, her mouth agape in shock. I think you need to intervene. This dungeon is suspected to be an impossible dungeon, the secretary said, trembling. At that moment, Shin Hyun and Ucheon had just landed from Jeju. They returned to Seoul amidst the mournful cries and farewells of die-hard fans. All the commissions he had accepted from the Jeju Island Guild Alliance had been completed. Sitting in the car with Ucheon driving, Shin Hyun absent-mindedly toyed with a skill stone he'd picked up in the dungeon, looking like a lost soul. Back then, Hagen had insisted he take it as a gesture of adept of life, so Shin Hyun was forced to take it. I can't believe a giant type appeared. Didn't you say that? Something similar happened at the Bujon dungeon? 2 types of giant monsters appearing twice already? Is the world ending or what? Ucheon wondered. But Shin Hyun felt the problem wasn't just the giant monsters. It was the cracks. What were those cracks? Both skills and physical attacks passed right through them, and even his senses couldn't perceive them. Plus, I'm the only one who can see the crack, according to guild leader Kim Hagen. Maybe it's because my perception stat is too high, but there's no way to be sure. Could it be related to the martial god who created the heavens? Shin Hyun was so lost in thought he didn't hear Ucheon calling his name. She was currently wondering if Shin Hyun was dating Ji-hee. Shin Hyun was startled, spraying out his water. He didn't know what crazy nonsense his younger sister was babbling about. There are tons of rumors going around. You two are always together. She'd make a great sister-in-law. She's beautiful and capable. Ucheon's gossip-mongering continued. Shin Hyun didn't want to discuss this any further. He awkwardly changed the subject. On the other side, Ji-hee groggily opened her eyes after waking up from a mountain of paperwork, only to see Shin Hyun before her, calmly sitting there drinking tea. It made Ji-hee jump. He had been sitting there waiting for her to wake up for about an hour. He'd even covered her with a coat in complete silence. I've got a headache because of those hunters protesting the merger with the Sunset Side. I also just found out about the Heaven Creating Guild. There's no confirmed information yet, but we've planted an informant in China, so it won't be long now. As Ji-hee was explaining, Shin Hyun suddenly pulled her closer, making her blush crimson. It was strange. Someone trained in martial arts like her shouldn't be exhausted so easily. Are you okay? Shin Hyun asked worriedly. Ji-hee's face darkened for a moment before she spoke up. Have you heard of an impossible dungeon? Once a dungeon's difficulty is adjusted, it shouldn't have that nickname. Shin Hyun's eyes widened as he noticed a large wound on Ji-hee's arm. A new dungeon appeared in Chucheon, and because its difficulty couldn't be assessed, I went in alone. What happened was, there was only a single monster, I even used my ultimate skill, but I could only take down one. I've never heard or seen a dungeon with that kind of difficulty before. And the reappearance of the giant-type monsters. The rules of the dungeons are changing drastically. If this keeps up, won't something terrible happen? Ji-hee said, biting her lip in fear. Shin-hyun felt he had to do something for her. He immediately decided to go there himself and see it with his own eyes. As cool as he tried to sound, though, when he actually reached the Chucheon dungeon, Shin-hyun realized the danger was no joke. He saw lava engulfing the entire area. Within the scorching sea of fire before him, something seemed to be swirling. Suddenly, the flames erupted, and from the very center, a colossal fire giant crawled out. As the beast kept screaming ferociously, Shin-hyun smirked. He guessed this must be the one who burned Ji-hye. Looks like he's going to have to teach it a lesson it won't ever forget. Shin-hyun drove his staff right into the middle of the monster, making it shriek in agony. Seems like being made of lava isn't all it's cracked up to be. Just as the rumors said, this guy is a real pain in the neck. Normal hunters find their movement restricted in this kind of environment. It's impossible to get close to it. So melee combat is pretty much out of the question, and for long range, you need some serious firepower to make a dent. Impossible Dungeon. The name really holds up. Shin-hyun thought the worst part was that no matter how much power he unleashed, the monster just kept regenerating its form. He'd been freezing it and slashing it for 15 minutes straight now. It was still the same old thing, and it was starting to tick him off. Seriously, what the hell? Could it be that the actual monster isn't this giant lava guy, but the lava itself? Shin-hyun's eyes widened as it clicked. He immediately blasted the pool of lava. Fire and smoke exploded everywhere, scattering the flames. Just as he thought, that was the core of the lava monster. It was small but mighty, so strong that Shin-hyun couldn't believe it. Right after that first hit, the system leveled him up not just once, but 3 whole times. A mischievous smirk crept across Shin-hyun's face. Looks like he knew exactly how to take advantage of this. By the time Shin-hyun left the dungeon, it was already pitch black. Ji-hye called to check in, and Shin-hyun happily suggested she hand this dungeon over to him. Unaware of the person stalking them from behind, Ji-hye saw that Shin-hyun liked the dungeon. She agreed to give it to him. Meanwhile, the Chinese military had already started making their moves. The next day, Shin-hyun brought Yoon-seon into the dungeon so she could help him attack the lava core. At first, Yoon-seon thought Shin-hyun had lost his mind. The monster was standing right there, yet he wasn't attacking it, instead going for that tiny thing. Just stay calm and try to destroy it. Trust me, I'm doing this for your own good. Don't worry. Shin-hyun chuckled and patted her head to calm her down. Following his instructions, Yoon-seon finally drew her bow, aimed at the lava core, and blew it to pieces. Yoon-seon's level shot up by 5 levels instantly, making her want to cry with joy. Still, it was less than he expected. He figured the EXP was reduced because it wasn't a solo hunt, so it got split up. It's too early to be surprised. The journey of power is only just beginning, Shin-hyun said with a smirk. Shin-hyun would pull out the monster's core for Yoon-seon to destroy. They repeated this process every single day until all 13 monsters were wiped out. After all was said and done, the lava in the dungeon had been cleared. Yoon-seon reached level 50 and became a high-ranking hunter, and she was as happy as if she'd won the lottery. Shin-hyun was now her absolute hero. To her, he was the center of the universe. As a result of this all-day dungeon conquest, Yoon-seon received a payout that only 10 people in all of Korea could ever dream of getting. As for Shin-hyun, he'd leveled up to 65, becoming a god-tier player. Shin-hyun pulled out the cube containing the skill stone he'd picked up back on Jeju Island. He gifted it to Yoon-seon, and with everything finished here, Shin-hyun left immediately. It was time to deal with the little rat that had been lurking around. A mysterious redhead was watching Shin-hyun from afar with binoculars, his heart pounding and sweat dripping as he witnessed Shin-hyun's true power with his own eyes. Little did he know, Shin-hyun had suddenly appeared right behind him. One shout from him scared the guy out of his wits, and he tried to run like a coward. But where did he think he was going? Once someone is in Shin-hyun's sights, there's no escape. He roughly grabbed the guy by the collar, his face twisted in a terrifying, menacing glare that made the guy wet his pants. You've been tailing me since yesterday, haven't you? I didn't expect you to follow me all the way here. You've got some nerve, but you've dug your own grave. Now tell me everything you know. Shin-hyun's eyes flared as he used a technique to strike the redhead directly. It made the guy convulse and foam at the mouth. After returning home, Shin Hyun told Ji-hye and Eun-seon everything he knew. This is more serious than I thought. I never imagined the dungeon's safe zone would be breached and a massive monster would appear. On top of that, a rift has appeared that only I can see. The merger with the Sunset Guild and the sudden appearance of a difficult dungeon, these two things alone are enough to keep me swamped, Ji-hye sighed, rubbing her aching head. It's lucky I have Eun-seon and Shin Hyun to help me deal with the dungeon. I've handed over the monitoring of the Bone Report dungeon to the Third Guild. They'll contact me if anything new comes up. More importantly, the fact that all these events are happening at the same time is definitely a sign that the rules are currently collapsing. Plus, with China involved, we have no idea what dangers lie ahead. That's why today I'm going to make Eun-seon even stronger. We'll keep training for a while so Eun-seon can overcome unexpected dangers on her own, protect herself, and make sure no one can target us, Shin Hyun said in a cold tone. Eun-seon nodded in agreement from her seat. Ji-hye remembered that Shin Hyun had just been followed by some nobody, so she asked if anything else had happened. The stalker followed us all the way to the dungeon today. Just as I suspected, he's one of the Heaven Creation Guild's men, but he was just a small fry, so I couldn't get anything useful out of him. But that doesn't mean I didn't get anything at all. Shin Hyun smirked, revealing a cunning smile. Galoop, the captain of the Heaven Creation Guild's assassin squad. At that moment, Gel was anxiously waiting for news from his subordinate Lu, but he hadn't heard a peep. A persistent knocking sounded at his door. Gel thought it was just a delivery guy. He shouted at them to just leave it at the door, but the knocking didn't stop. It got more and more intense. A few minutes later, the door was kicked wide open by Shin Hyun. Gel was absolutely furious. He tried to pull out a knife and lunge at Shin Hyun, but the sheer force of the impact sent him flying 10 meters away. Shin Hyun stepped inside with an arrogant air and offered a greeting. "Hello there, old man." Seeing Gel looking pale and terrified, it's clear Lu must have already been taken down by Shin Hyun. Then Gel, full of underhanded tricks, quickly hit the alarm to call his goons to surround Shin Hyun, simultaneously drawing his sword and pointing it right at him, leaving him no escape. Seeing a whole bunch of black-clad thugs standing there, Shin Hyun guessed they were all magic-wielding martial artists, so he rushed in and struck a few key pressure points on their leader. In an instant, he blocked the man's entire meridian system, rendering him completely useless. The underlings watched this scene unfold, and were absolutely scared out of their wits. I'm bored, so I've got to ask, you all study martial arts, right? Can you see the Murim status window? My body is aching from fighting for days, but that's fine. I don't have to hide my martial arts anymore. Open your eyes wide and look closely. See if there's a status window there or not. I'm going to give you a front row seat to the apocalypse of the martial arts world. Shin Hyun cracked his knuckles, grinning while realizing they couldn't see the status screen. Shin Hyun enjoyed himself, thrashing their entire group until he was out of breath, blood splattering all over his clothes like rain. Wave 2, the big boss, finally arrived. Seeing the silent, empty scene, he was incredibly surprised and planned to call Gel to see what was going on. But it was too late, buddy. Shin Hyun struck from behind, landing a direct punch on him. Wave 2 screamed in pain. Before him lay an entire room, painted with the blood of his own subordinates. Wave 2 finally understood what was happening. He roared madly, glaring at Shin Hyun with eyes full of hatred that burned with memories. What are you so surprised about? Do you have any idea how annoying it is to play cat and mouse with you, to the point where I had to come here myself? Shin Hyun laughed mockingly, and after showing Wave 2 the tragic sight of his scattered subordinates, he casually dunked him into the pool, soaking him like a drowned rat. Do people where you come from wear suits to go swimming? Don't you know that dressing up so fancy is really impolite? Shin Hyun teased. Don't get provoked by him, he thought. No. There are way too many people in this country who can use teleportation. It's a high-level technique. If that's the case, I can assume that Galupyeong and his underlings are all dead. Just how strong is that guy? Based on what I can sense, he's probably on the same level as Zhang Triong, maybe even higher. He can teleport, so it'll be hard to run if I want to. Still, even if I die, I have to report this guy's abilities to the Heavenly Creation Guild. Wave 2 thought to himself, then suddenly burst into maniacal laughter, making Shin Hyun think the water had fried his brain. No, it's the opposite. Thanks to you, I've cleared my head. Let me reintroduce myself. I am ranked 3rd in the Heavenly Creation Guild. Wave 2, the Flying Sword. With this blade in my hand, I will make your head part ways with your neck, Wave 2 said confidently. He lunged out of the pool and flew after Shin Hyun, relentlessly swinging his sword at him, but he missed every single strike. And not only did he miss, but he was also constantly being taunted by Shin Hyun. Wave 2 was absolutely furious. Shin Hyun kept moving around, refusing to stand still and fight, which made Wave 2 scream in frustration. Shin Hyun burst out laughing. "Oh, I can't hold it in. Think about it. If you were me, would you laugh if you saw an ant trying to kill you with a toothpick? No, is the Heavenly Creation Guild a zoo then? First it was you, the little rat. Now it's an ant like you. Your guild leader must be a monkey, right?" Hearing every insulting word, Wave 2 turned purple with rage. I was speechless. Shin Hyun poured all his power into a series of thunderous sword aura strikes aimed straight at Wave 2, forcing him to scramble to find a way to dodge. You arrogant jerk. But that arrogance might be my opening. If I'm careful, I can win. Wave 2, persistent and seemingly immortal, used all his remaining strength to draw his blade. He flew in to face Shin Hyun's power. This act of a mantis trying to stop a chariot made Shin Hyun let out a smirk. The sight of two hunters clashing in the sky left the bystanders on the ground watching in absolute shock, unable to look away. After relentlessly chasing Wave 2, Shin Hyun unleashed his fierce volcanic fire technique combined with his sword arts. It left Wave 2 gasping for air. You said you were the flying sword, right, kid? That's not a name you can just give yourself. But hey, nice try. I guess you've got nothing left to show, huh? Then you can die now, kid. After Shin Hyun's cold, effortless threat, an explosion of fire and smoke erupted. It wiped Wave 2 out in an instant. Seeing a member of the Dawn Guild who had returned to the scene, Shin Hyun asked him to help edit the final part to make the outcome look ambiguous. Then send it to the Vice Guild leader. Just treat this as part of the promotional video. In other words, this was a declaration of war, Shin Hyun boasted. News about Shin Hyun and the mysterious hunters flooded all the mass media channels. Based on the edited video, no one knew the current status of Shin Hyun or the attackers. Shin Hyun was thrilled to see the public buzzing about him non-stop, and the rumors spreading were exactly as he had planned. After cleaning up Wave 2's remains, Jihye approached Shin Hyun and asked, "Hyun, when I used absolute command to ask about the Heavenly Creation Guild's leader, I discovered they were all already dead," Shin Hyun explained. Jihye guessed they had been implanted with a type of magic that causes instant death when speaking certain words or topics to prevent them from revealing information. Shin Hyun quickly provided evidence of their confessions regarding the attack on him to Jihye, even though she had known about it for a while. I have to say it again, the Creation Association is a tough nut to crack, isn't it? You might get a little annoyed at me for saying this, but don't you think tearing through all 6 districts to find them isn't exactly the best strategy? Naturally, I had to try and stop you. I'd be in serious trouble if this turned into an international incident, Jihye. Look, even if I wanted to pull a stunt that reckless, I couldn't. They'd just vanish from the underground. If they knew I was looking for them out in the open like this, then that would be disastrous. If I get reckless and hike up the bounty just to keep up appearances, my opponents will just bail out before I can catch them. I have to trick them into thinking they actually have the upper hand. Once they're provoked enough, they're bound to make a move. Shin Hyun yawned and answered, "You should head back and get some sleep. Cover the press conference, Jihye." A week later, at the press conference, the room was packed with reporters and industry insiders. Seeing Jai actually show up here, they started whispering, speculating that maybe Dawn and Infinite had forged a powerful alliance. The doors swung open, and Shin Hyun strode in like a god, covered in bandages. He stole the entire spotlight of the press conference. Everyone gasped in shock, wondering who on earth could have hurt Shin Hyun this badly. Shin Hyun's acting was top tier, not a fake bone in his body. I didn't even take his hands out of his pockets. Shin Hyun stepped up to the podium. Hello, checking the mic before diving into the details and answering questions about the accident from last week. But I still need time to recover from the trauma and my injuries, so I hope everyone understands why I'm only speaking up about this now. Starting now, I'll answer all of your questions. Shin Hyun lied through his teeth. Reporter Park Daeji from NBC immediately raised his hand to ask, "There are rumors that there wasn't just one attacker. Is that true?" "That's right. There were over 20 assassins sent to take me out. The guy in the video was their leader, a high-level hunter just like me. It was a truly brutal fight. But they were nothing more than children playing with toys. I took care of it myself." It's hard for me to know exactly who they are right now, but based on the background check, all I can say is that they came from China. So, in the near future, I plan to propose a cooperation with the Chinese government to investigate this matter. Shin Hyun rattled off about international government relations, sending a shockwave through everyone in the room. I don't know their identities or why they were stalking me, but if the person pulling the strings is listening to this broadcast right now, then I have a message for you. Stop sending your pathetic, stupid thugs after me. If you have a problem with me, come here and deal with it yourself, you coward. Pathetic. Shin Hyun sneered while flipping the bird. Eye Doctor, on the other end, flipped out. After hearing that the Yui Hai gang hadn't been in touch and were likely captured or dead, Hai went blood red with rage, snapping at his secretary. Are you telling me that the third-tier Creation Association and the Special Assassination Unit I sent were all wiped out? Not only did they fail, but they got caught too? I was going to prepare more, but I've changed my mind. Just do as he says. I'm going there myself to rip his head off. Eye Doctor, covered in blood, screamed maniacally. Ocean was at home. Suddenly, the doorbell rang incessantly. When he opened it, a whole group of guys in black suits were standing there demanding Shin Hyun come with them. They actually had the nerve to show up at his house? Turns out these guys have more guts than I thought. Shin Hyun chuckled to himself. The next day, Shin Hyun arrived early at the meeting spot, inwardly thrilled to see exactly what kind of people the Creation Association were. From a distance, Jeon Junho waved enthusiastically at Shin Hyun, leaving him stunned. He had no idea why the guy was there. Also appearing at the scene was President Park Young-soo, making Shin Hyun even more confused. You must be surprised by my unexpected arrival, right? This is a serious matter, so I had no other choice. I hope you understand, Young-soo said in a low voice. Shin Hyun immediately retorted, wanting to know how Junho and Jung-soo actually knew each other. That's a secret everyone knows, kid. The Dawn Guild, the most famous in Korea, has deep, long-standing ties with the government. Jung-soo explained. Shin Hyun narrowed his eyes, thinking to himself, looks like Twilight is the same. So that means you, Mr. President, have some business to settle with the Creation Association? Then why come looking for a lowly hunter like me? Shin Hyun said arrogantly, showing zero respect. That caused Jung-soo's throat to tighten with irritation. Ignoring Shin Hyun's cocky attitude, Jung-soo went straight to the point. I want to hear the details about the Chinese hunters that ambushed you. I know the truth. Contrary to what you said, you were the one who attacked them first. Ironically, ever since the dungeons appeared, international relations have actually grown stronger because everyone knows we share a common enemy, the monsters. So when it comes to foreign hunters clashing with our own, if we don't resolve this properly, the peace we've worked so hard to maintain will shatter. My policy is to avoid international conflict at all costs. Jung-soo hadn't even finished speaking before Shin Hyun coldly cut him off. Sorry, but I think you've got a few things twisted. The Heaven Creation Association, and I have some bad blood, and they work with the Chinese government just like the Dawn Group works with the Korean government. You know that Dawn and Dusk once fought a life-or-death war, right? I'm absolutely certain of one thing now. The person pulling the strings behind the Dusk leader, Park Tae-hun, is someone from the Heaven Creation Association. I'm guessing you've already managed to get your hands on that recording of the confession from one of their people. And those documents inside Park Tae-hun's safe? That's all I wanted to say. What would have happened if Dusk had actually succeeded in toppling Dawn back during that war? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? This entire nation would be finished. Its resources and territories stolen by another country. Shin Hyun went on a rant, leaving Jung-soo sweating bullets as he listened. Everything you've done has just been for your own selfish gains, and that international conflict has been brewing for a long time now.